On Apex Inner Game, Paul discusses every man's nightmare. You never thought that your sweet little girlfriend could ever be anything other than that sweet, beautiful woman. But then you started noticing some strange things. She starts listening to a new podcast with a very interesting title. And then you notice her recent purchases on Amazon. Then her new favorite song. That's when you realize you've got a feminist girlfriend. You can think with go find a good place to hide. It's been a barrel last in your world. Welcome to my. If you want to know what to do if you find yourself with a feminist girlfriend, make sure that you tune in to tomorrow's episode of Apex Inner Game with Paul Benjamin.
Are we live still?
We are live. We are live. All right. This is the Nightmare Show. The Nightmare Show.
My God, that's the worst song, dude.
You guys, welcome to Paul's Apex Inner Game. All right. With Paul Benjamin. I'm your producer and your comic relief, Glenn Lawrence. And it's about to go down. We're about to shed some tears and let these ladies know, guys, you guys have some key issues to work out when you find out your girlfriend is a feminist. Just keep a lookout for the cues. You know, all of a sudden they're reading like the female Mystique. That's a warning. Without further ado, Paul Benjamin, I'm out.
All right, thanks, bro. I appreciate it. So, that song was so creepy. He sent me the promo and I was like, is that even a girl or is that like a transsexual or something? Which I don't care either way, whatever. But it makes it just creepy, dude. The whole song was girl or trans person. Very creepy. So that was good. So at any rate, yeah, we're going to talk about feminism here on the Apex Inner Game show, where we are going to have elevated discussions, okay, about topics related to dating, relationships, and inner game issues, right? And performance psychology and some of those things too. Tell you how to kind of handle yourself in the dating marketplace and in your relationships so you can get what you want, whether that's just short-term success in dating or whether that's long-term, long-lasting relationships, right? And that's where we're going to talk about generally in every show on a Tuesday, but that encompasses a lot of different topics. And, one of those being feminism. All right. So why are we going to talk about feminism? It's like, I'm not a feminist theory expert person, academic, I didn't go to, college for a feminist dance theory or anything, some strange degree like that. But, and the fact that I'm even talking about this at all, that I'm going to talk about feminism in an objective way, is when I say objective, I'm not going to sit here and tout off the wonders and, all the good things feminism has done just to make people feel better in order to get to some of the things that actually affect us today, right? Like I shouldn't need to do that. And if I have to do that, then that's a problem with you, the listener, and not me, quite frankly. Hey Glenn, I don't know if you know, I'm getting half of a screen here, so I don't know if you took yourself out or not, but I think you need to do that. so I can have a full screen. But yeah, in fact, we'll shoot him a little text over here because I don't know if you can hear me. I'll tell him he's full screen.
Got full screen on the feed.
Oh, you do? Okay, it's just
You
on my
are full
side.
screen on the feed. Yes, sir.
Oh, weird. Just on my side, it's just showing like half of you
Yeah,
there still. That's not normal.
exactly.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
You're
Whatever.
good. You're
Okay.
good.
All right. As long as it's hard to tell what's going on there. But all right. So yeah, anyway, at any rate. So yeah, if you have any questions, of course, about any topic, throw it in the chat. Glenn will be moderating the chat for me here and finding out what's good, what's not. We'll break periodically, answer those. But now let's kind of get into this topic. All right. But yeah, I shouldn't have to stroke and make people feel better by going, feminism's good like for this and good like for that. And, women were oppressed back in the day, and like have a whole history lesson for an hour just to make people feel better. Like if I have to do that, then that means that the end user, all right, the triggered person is not having an objective view. My emotions are not, your emotions are not my responsibility. You know what I mean? And that's a take you guys can take in your relationships in your life. I mean, someone else's emotions are not your responsibility. All right. You have a responsibility to treat people a certain way and to a certain standard. But if they're not emotionally responding, appropriately, or can't view something objectively, that is not your problem to solve. I mean, you can help the other. I don't, I recommend doing your best to help the other person in that communication, to help them understand, and to help them come to good communication with you, because that's what communication is about. It's about, trying to meet somebody where their understanding is, and being able to have, a good exchange of information. All right. And yeah, I recommend you do that as best as you can. But to a degree, though, their sensitivities and their triggeredness is not really your responsibility. Right. And so, like, some people, just because I'm a man talking about a topic of feminism, about half the world, maybe not half the world on the internet anyway. I guess there's a whole lot of people not on the internet and probably don't feel this way at all, but half the internet, is going to be triggered by that. They're going to be upset. They're going to think I'm a misogynist because how I talked about this, and that, by the way, is a form of bullying. So, not that I'm too sensitive or care much about bullying. It doesn't really, I'm not going to let anyone do it to me, so it doesn't affect me. But that being said, saying you're not allowed to talk about something because that, upsets me because of your demographic, like you are male. So you're not allowed to talk about this, or you are of a certain race or a certain sexual preference, right? So you're not allowed to talk about this. That is actually trying to enforce social rules on people due to demographic description. And it's essentially it's a form of, you know, we could say oppression, right? But that's a bit of a strong word for it, right? But it's a form of saying you are not allowed to talk about something because you fit a demographic. I mean, flip that around, and say women can't talk about something because she's a dumb woman. Like, that would be misogynist by design, right? If I were to say that, which I'm not. And so people who say things like that and who want to approach the world that way are actually they're the real and the true sexists and the true racists and the true people who, the true oppressors. Not that they actually have any power to oppress, but if they did, they would. You see what I mean? And so people with those mentalities make a bigger political stance here, but not that that's that kind of show. But people with those mentalities, I recommend you don't allow them, through the system, through your vote, that you don't allow these people to get into power, into office, and things like that. Because someone who thinks that way will oppress, given the opportunity, and it might be in small, socially acceptable ways. I say socially acceptable doesn't mean that's good or moral. Or maybe in larger, pretty terrible ways. And it usually happens rather gradually. Yeah. And so I will talk about this topic, and I don't care about who I offend. All right. Now, what I'm going to say about this is it's not, it's not so much that, although this can happen, where I've had it happen with my clients where a girl and a guy get in a relationship and she's one way. He doesn't have frame in the relationship is usually, whether he wants to admit that or not. And so what happens is she drifts over to a feminist ideology and ends up changing her patterns in the way that she treats that guy and the way that she shows up in the world, right? And I've seen that, okay? But that's not the most common thing. And that's not even the thing that's a very niche thing that happens. So it doesn't happen to everybody. But here's what is happening to you right now, if you're with a girl or if you're in a relationship, is that she's been indoctrinated with feminist ideals and values throughout probably her entire life, unless she's, it really doesn't matter what age she is. The younger she is, the more and the heavier that indoctrination has been. All right. So even the woman who says she's a Trump supporter and she's a conservative and she's this and she's that, like even that woman is a feminist to some degree. Even though she would say I'm not a feminist and I disagree, she probably is a feminist and she doesn't even know it because she's been indoctrinated with feminist ideals. And so she shows up with this framework of how the world is and how she should show up in the world and how her relationships should go. And she doesn't realize that those things happened due to feminist ideology. All right. Now, feminism is a triggering word, like I say it to some of you guys. And, some of you guys are, most of my audience is probably going to be like, boo, like it triggers a lot of bad ideas and for good reason. And then for some people, but for the general populace too, by the way, it's a socially acceptable word, excuse me. And in fact, if I don't say that I'm a feminist to a group of people outside of these small niche groups, right, of men usually, or some women, if I don't admit or say I'm a feminist, like they'll look at me like I'm a terrible misogynistic, female oppressor, abuser, like fill in the blank. I'm not socially acceptable if I don't say if the topic comes up and I don't admit or say that I'm a feminist, right? So people are being bullied into saying that there's something when they're really not necessarily or don't want to be, okay? And so they're being socially pressured. And that's an interesting thing, isn't it? So it's like, I'm not going to go down the rabbit hole of, first, second, third wave feminism and the purposes of it and the debate of whether it was good and that, or not, or necessary or not, because it's not that those aren't valuable discussions. It's just that I can take up hours and hours of time with that discussion with no real world application to your situation you're in now. Right. So like maybe there were some good reasons to have a feminist movement in the past. Maybe there's some good things to have come out of it years ago. But here's the problem with a movement. And it's any movement, which is why I don't identify with movements and try not to identify with groups. I just do my own thing and then I let people decide where they think I fit. Because the thing about movements is it becomes about its purpose or reason. But once that movement gets going, then people become invested emotionally with their identities and financially into that movement. And then what happens when the movement solves the problem, right, that they're originally trying to solve. They have to now make they can't just go away because they're too invested. You know, leadership and people who are heavily involved are way too invested in that movement. They wouldn't know what to do with themselves. They can't sit back and enjoy a victory. They have to feel oppressed still when there is no more oppression. I mean, oppression exists because human beings exist, but it doesn't exist disproportionately for one group of another, the way that people want to present or make it sound like. It's very circumstantial. You know what I mean? Like a person of a particular race could be oppressed in one area and circumstance, but then they move to another area and they're in a different circumstance and they have an advantage. It depends on who's sort of running that. This mass institutionalized oppression, I'm sorry, but I'm not somebody who thinks that exists. All right. I think it exists. I think oppression exists in smaller pockets and in isolated circumstances. Okay. For the most part. But what is being promoted, though, is a feminist ideology into our social framework and fabric. And it's men who allow it. It's men who allow that ideology because men just want to, most men, of course, just want to please the girl so that they can please and appease a girl's sensibilities so that they can get laid. I mean, that is the primary imperative of most men, is they'll just do anything to get laid. And that's the problem with you guys. Okay. So is that you don't have most men don't have standards. Their standard is whatever it takes to get laid. You know what I mean? Because most men are in sexual scarcity. So they're either trying to get laid or they're trying to cap or cope with not getting laid. And that's why simping is like such a dangerous problem. You know what I mean? But I don't see it ever going away, really. But it's the simping behaviors that allow for something like feminism on a socially wide level to exist. You know what I mean? Feminist ideology. Okay. When women have more opportunity today than men in a lot of circumstances, it's now circumstantial. There is no thing where women are oppressed now. Sorry, ladies, you're just not oppressed. Not anymore. You don't get to press the oppressed button. Now we go to a third world country that could be different. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about first world westernized nations, US, maybe Canada, maybe, Britain, United Kingdom, maybe Australia. You're not. There's certain jobs you could get where you're a minority as a female and you might have to have some struggles. But then there's certain jobs you could get where that's not the case, and educationally, women are the ones going to college now, not men. Women are the ones getting education now, by a much higher percentage. And I don't know, maybe somebody in the chat can look it up, but it's a much higher percentage now of women are attending college than men. And a much higher percentage of women are going to open themselves up to, jobs and opportunities that require that education.
Women are going to college 60% more than men, and I think they're graduating at a 40% rate more than men.
There we are. So where's the affirmative action then for men to get into college and to graduate more? And I'm not saying there should be. Okay, I don't think that there should be. But you see what I mean? It's not the way it was. So there isn't, women. A woman today has just as much opportunity as a man. It just happens to be in different ways. Okay. In other words, a man's probably not going to get a job at Hooters. Like, not that a man would want to do that, but you get what I'm saying. But
I worked at Hooters. I really did. That was like, I worked there like 18 years old. I was making wings, bro. I was making wings.
Yeah, you're in the back though.
Yeah, I saw all the titties too.
You weren't a server is what I'm saying. You know what I mean?
Oh, of
And
course
so
not.
like, yeah, and it's a certain job. I mean, but but I mean, today though, a man could be a nurse or a flight attendant. A woman could be a doctor or a lawyer or get in STEM. There is no limits to that. And if anything, due to hiring practices of a lot of places and affirmative action, women end up with more opportunities sometimes than men, depending on the circumstance. And again, it's all circumstantial. So this wide oppressive bullshit, it's bullshit. And what it is the oppression narrative is simply just let's take a target group, say they're marginalized or depressed, and even if that may even be true during certain parts of our history or whatever, or at the time it might be originally being said, but it's to say that and therefore say now in order to make some sort of justice for this, we have to take now from other people and hand it out and give it to the oppressed. So it's taking from a perceived oppressor, which oftentimes isn't an oppressor at all, and handing it over to somebody who is oppressed. And so that's the narrative. And the problem, and all that is, and this is what's funny about these, the leftists, the wokies, what they don't understand is that narrative just controls them. It's only so people with, more means and power than you can get you to vote for them and do what they want. Like it's just simply a marketing tool because, all of these oppressed groups, and you can fill in the blank, when you've elected the people to solve that oppression and that problem, did anything change for those people because of that person in charge? No, not really. You know what I mean? So it's just not, it's an attempt to just take from one group and give handouts to another. And all that does is win the votes and support of the oppressed group. And it wins votes and support from those who are being taken from because they're being shamed or guilted into it and sold that if you do this, vote for me, say you're a feminist, give a part of your tax dollars, your money to whatever, or allow for these hiring practices or do this or that, then the fact that you have this advantage, you can now, absolve yourself of this guilt because of your race or your gender or whatever, you see. So it's guilting one class to be able to take their resources to give only some of those resources to the oppressed class in order to say this equals it out now and this makes it okay. But of course, the guys in the middle are just taking all of the resources. So it's a big scam. Anyway, that's all it is. This is a scam to take your money, your resources, and win your support so that they could remain in power. That's a power grab. Because the answer to oppression is to, change the mindset and rules so that people are protected and they have freedom. Not change the rules so that we filter resources from one group to another, but put rules in play so that people are protected and that they have the freedom, right, to do what they want. And if they don't choose, to go into different fields, let's say of work, it's by choice. You know what I mean? And so it's just simply by giving for equal opportunity, but not allowing for equal outcomes. Not saying not allowing, but not trying to enforce equal outcomes. That's the thing. But anyways, that's it's kind of wrong. It's kind of effed up, and it starts at this political level, which I'm not going to get into it any more than I just did. Probably talked too much about it already. But then it filters into the behavior and mindset of people, we'll say on the ground, right? Like people who are in the dating market, people who are living their lives. And that includes the woman you're dating. The woman you're dating, even if she is a, strong supporter of, whatever conservative you want to place in there. I threw Trump in there because that's the most triggering guy. And says that she's a conservative and says she's not a liberal and all this stuff. She has feminist ideology that she has, ingrained in her behaviors, in her mindset, and she will bring that to the relationship. Unless you are going somewhere, unless you're geomaxing and going somewhere that's more of a third world country where that's not how they operate, which is an option, by the way. I'm not saying you should or shouldn't take that option, but unless that's what it is, you're going to deal with feminist ideology. When I sit down or if I'm dating somebody and they say they're a feminist, I don't actually care. All right. Because the one that says she isn't a feminist is still a feminist in a way that it's going to affect my relationship with her. Guaranteed. I can almost guarantee it. All right. So whether she says it or doesn't say it just tells me about her social conditioning. Now, you guys who are spurging out in the chat right now, if you're doing that, because I can't see, I don't know. But if you guys are maybe spurging out as you watch me, okay, I didn't say marry the girl. I didn't say get in a relationship with her. You know what I mean? Until you know that these sort of principles and ideas are more or less worked out to where she can be in the frame of you, in the frame of your relationship, which is not going to be feminist, because the feminist way of handling life and relationships is a recipe for failure. So, and you're not going to fail or want yourself to fail. So you're not going to get into a long-term thing with her. But here's what guys think. This is why your red flag thing, not to say that a red flags list is bad. Okay. It's good, a good starting point. But a lot of you guys try to think that some autistic red flags list is going to keep you out of trouble. It just makes you more open for manipulation. This is why you need game, because the girl that you could go out with, let's say you're dating, go out with one girl. She's cute. She's hot. She's got good things going for her. And it comes out, that she doesn't necessarily, let's say she's not like wearing it on her sleeve. But if she were to if you were to have a conversation or it were to come up, she'd be like, well, yeah, I'm a feminist, cool. Right. And then a lot of you guys would go, oh, I'm going to discount that one. And then you go for the one who says, maybe doesn't even have as good a qualities, but would say, oh, I'm a conservative. In fact, this girl date number 2, wears it on her sleeve. I'm a conservative. I'm a Trumper. I'm glad that you don't, I'm glad that you're not like some, Democrat or male feminist, right? And and you think you want a gold mine now because you're like, wow, this girl's really cool. She's a conservative. She's a Trump supporter. She showed up to my date with a MAGA hat on. Like you think you won a prize. You didn't win a prize. What you got is a feminist, okay, who's using a conservative framework to gain social status and support, and her ideals are still gynocentric and feminist, and it's going to show up in your relationship in exactly the places you don't want. She's going to be controlling. She's going to be strong and independent. She's going to be bitchy. She's going to say she wants equal partnership, which really means she's in control. She's going to pull all that same crap, right? And it's going to be worse because she's going to use, sort of a conservative, I'm just, again, using Trump because he's the most divisive person, but it would pick anybody. But I'm a Trump supporter, whatever it is that you think is great. She's just going to use that as a means of justifying her framework and manipulating your behavior. So congratulations. You know what I mean? Whereas the girl who wasn't being political at all, but maybe would identify as a feminist, you would discount, when maybe that girl was the better choice. Do you guys follow what I'm saying? Because maybe that girl who says she's a feminist is just following what's socially acceptable, which is to say I'm a feminist. But most people who say that don't know what that means. They think it means, that they are supporting equality, and equality sounds good. And that's what they've been told. And that's how they sell it, by the way. You can read, what is it? Saul Alinsky, Rules for Radicals, I think. I mean, the left has a clear agenda and strategy. One of those things is to get you to believe in something and consent and agree with something when you don't have the full definition or reason of what you're or of what you're agreeing to. So, in other words, they get guys to say and women to say, "Yeah, I'm a feminist because I want equality," and that makes them feel better. That sounds good, but feminism is not really about equality, you know. So, I mean, feminism is about it's. I'm trying to find my notes here, but because I put a definition, because the actual wording of it is pretty good. Yeah. So feminism, even when you look at definitions, it doesn't sound bad or it doesn't sound like you're being tricked. The advocacy of women's rights on the basis of equality of the sexes. So that is the definition: is the advocacy of women's rights on the basis of equality of the sexes. All right. So we're already saying I'm going to advocate not for both men and women to do well and to have equal opportunity. I'm going to advocate for one particular target group. Now, the basis of that is that we fight for this equality. But what does that equality mean? It's kind of a container word, isn't it? So, like, what I might think is equality, which is equal opportunity, which is not being prevented or oppressed from doing something because of gender. However, we can still select based on outcomes and skill and ability. So, in other words, if I got two people competing for a job, right? Their gender doesn't matter to me, but their skills and abilities do matter, and the results they get do matter. And so, if a man is just getting a better result, he should have the position, not be prevented from having the position, let's say, due to hiring practices where we need to have more women in this position. You get what I mean? Or the other way around, like she's a better candidate, but I don't want to ruin the boys club in the office, which doesn't happen anymore as much. I don't think it's not the 1970s, right? So that shouldn't be a thing, but equality of opportunity, I'm in support of that. So if you think, and I do want women to have rights. Some of you guys in the chat don't, but I do. Okay. And so for me, am I a male feminist, right? Well, no, because the word equality is a container word. And a lot of people mean, when they say equality, they mean equality of outcomes. So if they see that men, like white men have more resources as a demographic than, women, right? Or women of particular racial minority groups, they see that inequality as oppression when it's not necessarily oppression. Okay. If minority women have less opportunity, then then that there could be something going on there. But if it's just the outcomes, that's not oppression any more than I don't think that men are being oppressed from completing college just because there's a 40% difference between men and women of completing college. I don't think that men are oppressed when it comes to college. I just think that women are promoted. I think that the climate and the mental framework in university being so feminist, it caters more to women than men. And so men tend to leave that environment. All right. And it's not, necessarily a precursor to success, whether or not you have college or not by itself. All right. But anyway, so don't get it twisted. That conservative Trump hat supporter or whatever she is not necessarily who she thinks she is. She's going to bring feminist gynocentric ideals into the relationship, most likely. And if she is a really strong, politically vocal person, in any sense, that's the red flag. My red flag is someone who is in a movement. Okay. And I don't care what that movement is. If she is a Trump movement supporter girl, to me, that's a red flag. Okay. As much as it would be, I'm a pink hat wearing feminist going on the Women's March. Maybe not as much. All right. But kind of pretty close for me. And I would say for all of you too. Why? Because this person is latching on to an ideology from a group in order to justify her own behavior and principles. Now, I'm not saying supporting a group, right, is bad, but I'm talking about bumper sticker, hat wearing, being so into that as like a woman that you want to signal to the world that this is my group identity. See, I find that people who want to do that sort of signaling, particularly when it's women doing it, they're trying to appeal to the group for a reason. And that reason is to gain some kind of social power or clout, you know. Now we're minusing those who might, have platforms. Like if a woman's like livelihood or identity is, let's say she's a conservative pundit, well, that's what she does for a living. So I'm not counting her. Okay. I'm not counting somebody who does something to make money. I'm talking, but but then her reason is to make money. Now, I'm not saying she doesn't believe in what she's saying either. I'm not saying that she's not somebody I'm not saying she's hypocritical or anything like that, but I'm saying that there is a motive, there is a reason behind it. And you can't assume that because they take on an ideology that suits your ideology, that means that is going to show up for her in her behavior, in her mental frameworks, in a relationship with you. In fact, oftentimes it won't, but she will use that bigger ideology as her authority. And that's what ends up being actually the problem, is that a larger ideology that you are not more or less in control of, and that can get polluted or altered, becomes her master, becomes her leader, becomes her frame. It's Big Daddy Trump. That's her leader. you know and then she says she's this or she's that or whatever that you don't agree with, or maybe it makes decisions you don't like, but you're not the person, right? That's the person that she sees as the authority in her life. And I guess that's the issue, because if you want a long-term relationship with a girl, she has to see you as an authority in her life. And I know that that's unpopular. Women don't like that, which is, by the way, what I mean. That's one principle I'm talking about. Women not liking the idea or the fact that a man has to be an authority in her life. Okay. That right there goes against feminist ideology. And most women, like your conservative Trump supporting flag waving woman, a lot of those girls, you say, well, yeah, so your boyfriend should be your authority on certain matters in the relationship and decisions you make. She ain't gonna like that. She's not, she's watch her get uncomfortable. All right. And that's what I mean. She is a closet feminist. Okay. She doesn't know it either. She would, adamantly disagree probably, but she is, if she doesn't agree with that principle, well, that's, then that's feminism, right? Because it wasn't until feminism that, the reason why, by the way, is because we're genetically wired a certain way. And in the sexual social relationship, right? That whether it be a marriage or boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever, in that relationship, the man has a certain level of authority in that relationship. We can take gender out of it if we want and say the top or the dominant has the authority on a lot of matters and certain matters in that relationship. So it even does apply, by the way, to same-sex couples, because generally with same-sex couples, there's a dominant and there's sort of a submissive. right? There's kind of a husband or a top, and there's a wife. So even in most of those relationships, it's the same. Somebody is leading the relationship. Equality is not real when it comes to relationships. Okay, it's an illusion. And so when a woman shies against that, and you'll see the most Christian women out there, the most traditional women, the conservative Trump hat wearing women, when you say, okay, your man's an authority when it comes to certain decisions, right? She's not gonna like. She'll see. You'll watch her She's either gonna shy away from it, not like it, outright disagree, or get into now she wants to rationalize and discuss it when it's okay and appropriate for her man to have any authority. Well, shit. If you're having that discussion, who's in charge, right? And so this is the problem, and this is the problem with why it's hard to date and have relationships with modern women nowadays. But it's actually really easy to have sex with them. Having sex with them is super easy. Having a roster of girls to bang is pretty simple nowadays. More easy than it was, years and years ago. In my own history, I noticed it's easier. Maybe that's just because I'm better at it, but I even noticed from peers that get good enough at it, it's easier to get a girl into bed. All right. Than it was even 20 years ago. All right. And from all accounts, longer ago than that. Harder, though, for them to be relationship capable. Why? They don't want to defer to a man's authority. That's not okay to them. They want equality. Well, guess what? That's feminism. All right. Now, a girl who is adamantly in a movement, let's say she's a Christian, adamantly in a Christian framework, but that Christian framework isn't necessarily traditional. Let's say it's more modern Christian. The Bible is their authority, blah, blah, where they go to a church, which is really a stage, and, the preachers are performers. And, they have this whole basically gynocentric framework, wearing, Christian clothing and wearing a cross. That girl's going to defer to that framework, which is really feminist, wearing Christian clothing, versus yours as a man in a relationship. And then you're going to have this power dynamic, this struggle with this girl. Okay. That's what's going to happen. So your girl's a feminist already. I mean, that's just the reality of it. Now, maybe you're the exception, but you'll see when I start going through some of the characteristics and things I'm talking about, that your girl or the girls you're dating probably have that framework. And that does not come from our biological wiring, for sure. That does not come from, some other source, anything other than gynocentric social order and feminist ideology that's been sort of implemented in the first world very slowly for now over a century, right? And so that's what you're going to find. That's what you're going to find. And then what do you do about that? Well, what you do about that has to do with your frame, and has to do with her experiencing, because you're a good dude, right? Who has good leadership and good emotional self-control, her experiencing a better way. That's the thing. Where the experience of sort of looking away from some of these frameworks that come from a gynocentric or feminist order is not going to make her have what she wants ultimately in life, because that is the truth, right? There's a lot of things, and I'm going to go over a list of these things that are presented in the Western world that is not conducive for a girl's success or a guy's success when it comes to long term. Ironically, feminist ideology has been the greatest thing for men in terms of getting laid. Short-term, inconsequential sex with ratchet-ass girls, that we can thank feminism for. We can thank feminism for being able to have, tens of hundreds of notch counts with no consequence as men if we want to. We can have as much sex as we can game with no social consequence for the most part, no physical consequence because we can abort if we, they'll abort the baby for us. We don't need to do anything about that. And, maybe psychological consequences when it comes down to trying to find a good woman to settle down with, a good woman, but you get what I mean, right? Yeah, probably some consequences there. But in terms of getting laid, like, thank you, feminism. I appreciate feminism because now you're literally just, if I want to go on a bender, for some reason, I'm out of my relationship and I decide I want to go on a bender and just bang through ratchet hose. I got feminism to thank me for that. Like that is totally eroded any self-protection that a girl might have for her long-term success, for her just to go for short-term, sex whenever she feels like it. And all I have to do is show up and be that, person she'd have short-term sex with. Like when she doesn't even think. In fact, she's been lied to so badly that she thinks that her consequences and her outcomes are going to be good, even though she's going to have short-term sex with Chad. I just be the Chad, show up, banger. Like, that's great. This is great, right? Like, thank you, feminism. For those of you guys are like just banging through girls, like, don't be mad about it. Just be happy about the feminism. All right. Now, long-term success, though, and that's a tough one. And so I'm going to go through. I'm going to go through some of the things that women think nowadays that has come from feminist ideology and a gynocentric social order that you need to look out for. It's going to show up in your relationships, and you didn't even think that they would. You think, I found a great girl. She's a conservative girl, or she's this, or she's that, And sometimes you guys will be like, I found a great girl, but she's kind of like a little bit of a liberal, and I don't know if I should go for that. Well, don't think she's better. Like, don't think she's worse than the girl who said she was a conservative. She's probably not worse. And sometimes the liberal girl is actually better because if she's not so indoctrinated and heavy into an ideology, she just came from that background and like, this is kind of how I feel about things and my idea. But she's open to discussion and open to not just discussion, but taking on a different framework. Like if the liberal girl is open to taking on a different framework, cool. That the cute hippie girl that's not too serious about the political stuff is a way better choice than a raging conservative woman. Trust me, because you'll think the raging strong independent conservative woman, you think that's a better choice. But what did I just say there? Raging strong independent. When you say no to her, when you say, hey, that doesn't work for me, that way of thinking is incorrect, what do you think you're going to get from the raging, strong, and independent Trump hat wearing conservative girl? Right? When the kind of chilled out, cute hippie girl, who just like, man, everyone just get along. I don't know much about politics, but like, I'm kind of, it makes sense to, vote for Bernie, I think. Right? And you're just like, she's kind of just doesn't know, she's just dumb for wanting to vote for that guy. But, that's, who cares, right? Like when you're just like, no, babe, that's a bad idea. And she's like, oh, why is that? Okay. She's moldable. She's not super rate. When you have a disagreement with that one, what do you think? You're not going to get the raging, strong, and independent woman you have to fight against. You're going to get a person who's open to having more of an openness, possibly, right? Even though her social circles and her framework was a little different than what you would agree with. And so things are not as they seem. And your game matters, and you got to look what's behind the curtain. Okay. And some of you guys who aren't good with women have trouble with this. So I'm here to help you. All right. I'll pause here because I got a lot of traits to cover, but Let's see if there's any questions or comments in the chat here. What do you got, Glenn? Anything?
No supers at the moment. We got a few questions though.
All right.
All right. We got where's it at? Oh, is there a male version of the restaurant called the Rooster? Is that supposed to be like the male version of Hooters? The Rooster?
I don't know.
I don't know.
Oh, we're like girls go to check dudes out.
Well, like instead of getting wings, they get legs.
I guess. I mean, there's male strip clubs and stuff like that. There's girls who
I
hire
used
male
to work at
strippers.
Thunder from Down Under, you know. But Magic
Yeah,
Mike
right.
days. No, I'm kidding.
There's Magic Mike triple XL.
Triple XL, yeah.
That's out right now for women to watch. I mean, so yeah, there's a version of it.
I know a couple girls that went to the show in Vegas.
Yeah.
Tease it asks, does that being in a movement also include joining the military? Does that being in a movement also join the military? Oh, like the feminist movement?
Well, sometimes.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's part of it.
Sometimes, so it's the mental framework is different. You know, it depends on the girl joining what she thinks. But when a girl is joining to be an infantryman, you know what I mean? Like, and she wants to join in order to be like G.I. Jane or more of some, to try to be a dude in combat, essentially, right? And then she gets twisted up when
it's not realistic.
She struggles to meet the standards on a physical and mental level
for that not realistic. They lower the standards. They lower.
That's what they ended up doing.
Yeah, and that's ridiculous. Like, I need you to be able to carry my weight, not your weight. You know what I mean?
Right. But I mean, there's a lot of women that join the military, like, especially young girls. They don't know what they're doing anyway. Like, same with the guys, right? They don't know. But once they get into it, I mean, it just depends. Like, some women don't have. I know some women in the military who don't have that. Even though, again, they're all like indoctrinated a little bit. If they don't, until they become aware of it. Right, they don't know, but they're not necessarily these feminists, like, whatever women. Like, they're great, and they're great at their jobs, they're great in their roles. So women in the military, it's not a bad thing. I mean, we need women in the military, but it's when they try to get into what has generally been considered a male dominated role due to really genetic factors, and they try to compete in that environment and then expect to have exceptions, or it's just, that's tough, man. It's really challenging. That's a really challenging issue. It's like, it's a complicated issue, man. Like, it's not black and white thing. Like, even the girls who went to Ranger school, like, on the one, like, and that was a big deal. On the one hand, I, by the way, met one of the girls who had been through, got a tab from Ranger school. And she was pretty cool, actually, like a very cool person. And I had a lot of respect for her too. In fact, I don't disrespect the women who wanted to try it and go through with it. The problem isn't actually the women. The problem is the leadership. The problem is the men, because it usually, and just leadership in general, whether it's man or woman in charge, that run the schools, run the programs, and that are pushing. There's a push to get women to try to do this stuff, because, see, and this is what happens. There's an illusion that because we don't have equal outcomes for men and women in certain jobs, that must mean that women are being prevented or oppressed. And so in some ways they were prevented, right? So, okay, they opened it up. They said women could do it and join. But then all right, so now women could do it. But the problem is, like, now when women don't make it because of the genetic differences, instead of recognizing that it's not a equal opportunity problem, the standards are the standards. Just, we have, men and women are different, and there are genetic differences, which means most, if not almost all, women will not be able to meet the standard, right? Instead of just recognizing that as a fact and recognizing that it's still fair, it becomes, well, women aren't getting through the program, so there must be some sort of oppression or problem happening. It's the assumption automatically that it's oppression is a reason we don't get the equal outcome. And then that's the problem in the military. And that, by the way, is a feminist indoctrinated idea in the military. When they take something and they look at numbers and they see that women are not performing in that area, instead of saying and looking at it objectively and then recognizing after an objective look that, well, women just don't want to do that job. And if they do, they can't physically do it. Most women will not physically be able to do it. And that's okay. That's just the genetic differences, just physical differences, right? Instead of just recognizing that, it becomes, oh, we need to do something because women are somehow unfairly unable to get through this. Because if you assume men and women are equal, which they're not, then you have to assume when large amounts of women can't do a particular job and can't pass the standard, you have to assume then there's something wrong with the way that standard's being written. Because they're starting off with an idea that's false. Men and women are equal. That's a feminist idea when it's not true. It's nobody's equal. Regardless of their gender or race, doesn't matter. Nobody's equal. We all have things that are advantages and disadvantages. You know, if I get on the basketball court with just about anybody, but particularly somebody who's like a pro or really good at basketball, I'm going to lose. I'm not an equal ball player when it comes to basketball because I don't play the sport. This is not something I gravitated towards. It's not some unfair standard. It's because I suck at basketball. You know what I mean? And so that's the problem, is that military is not recognizing those things. And so feminist indoctrination and ideals, yeah, it's in the military. It's in there loud and clear. We get made fun of it. We're made fun of by other countries because of it here in the United States. And it may be the downfall of the soldier. What's preventing, what keeps us on top is our technological advances in our funding. But the individual soldier, that's not what's keeping us on top anymore. We have a very gynocentric framework now, and it's been crushing us in terms of our standards for our soldiers. And that's too bad. That's my opinion, though. That's just my unhinged opinion. That's not like me in a uniform representing anything opinion. But anyway, that's all I got to say about that.
And we got a super chat. We got a super chat from our girl, T Diamond. Have you noticed that rom-coms and Disney romances have fallen off? Women are beating up men in action flicks now. Did it start with Sex in the City? Yes, it did. And guess what? I wrote a rom-com, and we're coming out with it. It's called Mind Dates. It's the best red pill dating movie ever. It'll be coming out soon. But yeah, they make it unrealistic, right? Like a woman really kicking the dude's ass, like, come on, 120 pounds. She's really going to throw a guy around like you or me? No.
Right. Oh yeah. No, it's these misplaced standards, and it's like, and that's, we'll do an episode on movies and stuff and how that's been affecting the social framework as well. And it's just a promotion of this big, gigantic lie to really take your money. That's all it is, to make people feel a certain way, so that they get your resources. You know what I mean? And so it's just, that's what it's turned into. And unfortunately, we've lost in, media, we'll say, in Hollywood and movies and all those sorts of things. We've lost art, not completely, but in a lot of situations, we've lost the artistic element of what movies used to be like. And this is why, younger chicks, my younger girl, you know, she makes fun of me about it a little bit. We joke about it because I really like old movies, and I make her watch them sometimes. She does usually like them after I make her do it. But the thing about old movies, right? The reason why the younger generation doesn't would gravitate away from them is because they have attention span problems. So you'll notice that older movies are slower, but that's good though in a way. Like there, if you don't have an attention span problem, it actually builds tension and can build a plot. Do you know what I mean? And so and build character development. But see, like younger people are so used to swiping that if the movie is not like distraction, 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 distraction. In fact, it's funny, like some of my shorts and some of my like my video I did on that one video I have over on Apex Intergame channel. There's gonna be more to come, by the way. I'm working on those. There's a lot of breaks and breaks and breaks. Like, and then some people are like, dude, like, because they're used to my long form content like this, they're like, it's a great video, but man, it was like all these breaks everywhere. It was like really distracting. Yeah, because that guy is probably a guy who's over 30 years old, maybe over 32, 33 years old, and is not, doesn't have an attention span problem. And so all of those breaks, was just kind of like, ugh, not this again. But you notice content even on YouTube, it's a lot of breaks and breaks and breaks. That's what grabs everybody's attention. Because regardless of age, social media and has made us a distracted culture. And so now movies have responded to that. If movies aren't, moving around a lot, you know what I mean? And if it's not faster moving, it won't grab the attention of an audience oftentimes. And so like you see in movies today, they're more designed for the ADHD social media scrolling person rather than a person who really can get into like the artistic element of the plots and stuff like that. So instead of it unfolding almost like something you'd see in a theater, right, it's like breaks here, breaks there, backstory, foreshadowing, four-story, this, like, which can be cool if it's done right. It's cool, it's not bad, but I'm just saying that you see more of that today, whereas you don't have that in the older movies. So the younger people under 30, they get like, it's good, but it's slow. And I felt that way too about some of the older movies, even myself. But what you do gain though is an artistic element, meaning the writer, the director, they were building the story from not thinking about demographics as much. They're just thinking about, how to build this story to write a good story, to get capture a good images and story on film. Whereas nowadays, a lot of those decisions for a lot of those movies, from my understanding, Glenn can correct me or, verify and correct me as I say things here, since I'm not in the industry. But my understanding is that, it's a conference table full of people and they're brainstorming. And part of that brainstorm is, oh, we got to hit this demographic for the gays. Oh, we got to hit this demographic.
Let me tell you, like, so Mind Dates was shut down from the studios, right? That we were pitching to, because what you're doing is you pitch to like a distributor, and this distributor is like, okay, so how many different groups of people can we hit with this movie? Like, how wide is the spread of the movie? And I'm like, they're like, do you have any gay people in your movie? I'm like, no. Well, how about trans? Fuck no. Then they're like, well, how about strong female lead? No. They're supportive. They're strong female supporting actresses. Oh, do they fight? No, but they get naked. Like, like they're like, so it's a man movie. Yeah. And it's a romantic comedy. Yeah. They're like, I don't think this is gonna work for us.
Right.
But no, they want to see how many demographics you can hit. They want to. Do you have the Black community? Do you have the Latino community? Is the Latinx transsexual community associated? Like, you have to have a trans in something these days, or at least someone, at least an ugly enough girl that looks like a trans. Just to pass. Like, I mean, it's crazy, but it's true.
I just got banned again.
My bad. Let's just shut up from now on.
No, it's fine. Whatever. I don't care. But that's no, but that's good though, man. That's good. Like that's exactly what my understanding is too. And that takes the art out of it though. Because sometimes, sometimes there isn't, to artificially put, there's nothing wrong with having a transsexual in a movie. There's nothing wrong with having different demographics. It's just that does it fit the story? Like, have you ever been watching a movie and then like all of a sudden there's a sex scene out of nowhere and you're like, I mean, not that I'm, prude about sex scenes, but it's like, this doesn't seem to fit the movie. That's what ends up happening when these distributors get involved and these producers get involved. They're just trying to, it's a money grab. And I understand you got to make money, but my opinion is what they lose sight of is that everyone will watch a good story. A transsexual person, as well as a black person, as well as a white person, as well as a Hispanic person, whatever, will watch a good story. Even if that story is about, I don't know, Asians, which it didn't fit any of those other demographics. You know what I mean? Like, and it took place in China and everyone's Asian, but it's done really well. A good movie that's done well and has a good story and that shows up on film in a good way, like in an entertaining way, people generally don't care. Like they're not sitting there going, oh, like I need to see more of this or more of that. Maybe at one time that was a thing when you didn't see, those things as often, but they weren't there though. And here's another issue, not to get in the rabbit hole, but it's like, for example, gay population, it's a small percentage of people that are actually gay. Now, I mean, of course, there's high school people identifying as things to be cool, but by the time they become adults, that's a new trend. But by the time they become adults, there's a small percentage of people that are actually, gay. So like to overrepresent that, it gets to be a little bit tiring. You know what I mean? To see the strong, independent woman beating up a guy, it's exhausting just to watch because it's like, that's not even real. But a distributor has decided we need to have that. And it takes the art away from the movie. Hey, I love movies where the strong female role kicked ass when it made sense. Aliens, Sigourney Weaver was a badass in that movie and was portrayed really well. Terminator 2, Sarah Connor's character was a badass and was played really well. So I'm not against female leads. It's not like some misogynist thing. It's just that it's forced in there with no artistic element to it, and that's what you see. And you know what that does?
Well,
they
don't have the hero's journey.
Right.
They don't have the heroes. They don't have they just
Sarah Connor did though.
Well,
and in
did.
The Terminator beginning.
She did.
Which is
I'm
good.
saying like Wonder Woman. She's just wondrous with her wonder bra. Okay, like
yeah.
I mean, Captain Marvel.
Yeah,
Captain
Marvel. That's a disservice to women.
Like the whole Marvel movie is going on for 2.5 hours. Everybody's getting their butt kicked. Thor's dying. Right. Iron Man's somewhere, and then she comes in the last 2 minutes of the film and just snaps her finger. The dude's dead. Like, really?
Yeah.
All right, I digress.
Right. You know what that does, dude? No, you're fine. No, it's good because you're right. And you know what that does, though? It's actually really bad for girls, especially young girls, because a girl doesn't understand. I mean, not every girl, of course, but a young girl's not raised to see that hero's journey or that struggle, because real life is struggle. Real life is where you are bad at something that you want to be good at, or maybe you have a talent in something, but you're still getting your ass kicked by other people who also had talents and who had honed that talent more than you had. And so what you have to do is you have to train, you have to get better, you have to go through trials and tribulations, hardship. You have to battle against others who have been better than you classically in order to then win and be good or better at something, right? That's the hero's journey, right? And women don't see that. They just show up and just are, because power of the magical vagina, Wonder Woman, Captain Marvel, right? It's not Luke Skywalker, who spent, a couple movies getting his ass kicked, getting his hand chopped off until he became something, right? It was like that's a different narrative. That's a hero's journey. But what happens, it's a disservice to women, because women then don't have this ingrained social, socially conditioned mind framework of, what, I'm going to have to be bad at something, and I'm going to make mistakes, and I have to take accountability for those mistakes and my lack of skill and sucking at something in order to get better. That narrative doesn't exist. And that's a detriment to girls. It really is, because it's something they have to fight against. It's just placating to the female ego. There's plenty of women out there who are working hard but feel bad about themselves now, because they're not able to just show up and be, and then of course they look at social media, and there's like plenty of girls who are pretty and they fake it on social media. When I say fake it, I mean fake their success, fake everything they have, when really it's just photos, and these girls that are out there trying and struggling think they're failures to a greater degree than a lot of men in the same shoes, because they don't think that they don't have that narrative of trying and struggling and doing better than to get the success in their life, with whatever that success means to them, And so that's a detriment, and that's a problem. That's again a negative part of feminism that has harmed young girls. And what happens is then, if they don't they give up easy. They give up on their relationships very easily. They have a transactional mindset on their relationships. So they just bang dudes. And then, if they're told no once, or there's any hardship or any argument, they just bounce to the next dude. There's no sense of having to work through anything, or have any resiliency, or having to improve themselves, or having to make themselves better. Because part of the social conditioning from feminism is that you're amazing and great and wonderful because you're a woman. You don't need to change anything. Well, that's not true. We all have to change things about ourselves. We all have to make ourselves better. That doesn't mean we're not good or whatever. It doesn't mean, it's not to shame anyone, but it's not this extreme binary thinking, right? Like, I mean, we all, have strengths and things that, are good about us, but we need to do better at too. And we need to take accountability and prove ourselves. Everybody, man and woman. But, the feminist narratives is that you're great, perfect, wonderful because you have a vagina. Well, that's a detriment to young women, an absolute detriment, and a lie, and just placating to your ego. It's actually insulting. And this is where I say I think feminism is insulting to women, because it's like patting them on the head like a child or a mentally disabled person. Oh, you're good just the way you are. You're just wonderful. You're just blah, blah. It's placating. Like, how could you not be insulted by that? But it's amazing to me that at a large scale, women are not insulted by that more. They just go, yeah, I'm a good girl. You know what I mean? It's just ridiculous. It doesn't help them get any better. It doesn't help them have a better life. And they bring that to the relationship that you're going to be in. Okay, so that's the thing. Well, I'll move on to other stuff, unless you got any more supers or any questions. That's okay. We can move on. I'll let you interrupt me if you do. So
no more supers. We're good.
All right, let's go. Let's move on then. Here we got. So women.
Oh, one more. Yes, Ernesto. Oh. These are shoulder straps. So holsters for my wallet and my phone. My gun holster is concealed.
Oh. Yeah. You can't wear that in California with a gun on it. You got to come to Michigan for that. Anyway, it's
Don't
not
tempt
open
me.
carry over
Don't
there.
tempt me.
Or Texas. You're looking at that one. But all right. So generally speaking, not all the time, but when it comes to relationships, particularly, women are not benevolent leaders by design. And I'm sorry that that's unpopular, but it's true. All right. And the reason why is because women are genetically, and evolutionarily speaking, on the back end of the power dynamic. In other words, they're not in charge usually. So what they are usually trying to do is trying to, if in absence of being with someone that they trust to lead them, they're trying to gain power for themselves in order to secure their own success and well-being. And they do that in relationships, but they're always coming from the underdog, position. At least that's the mental framework. That's the evolutionary framework. And so when you believe, or your framework is that for your own safety and well-being, you have to grab as much power as you can and keep the other person from being powerful, that is a dictator by definition. Okay. So women are dictators. I'll put that in a short when it comes to their relationships. If they're in charge, they become dictators. Okay. Because a dictator, classically speaking, comes from usually, let's think Saddam Hussein here for a minute. Okay. Women are Saddam Hussein in their relationships. I'm trying to see how divisive I can get for my shorts. But
Bro, you thought I was bad? You said I'm bad. Women are Saddam Hussein?
Your wife is Saddam Hussein.
I mean, it's true. And you know what? Here, I'm going to say one more thing. Here's what's up. Check this out. Guys, it's in the Bible. It's in the Bible. Okay. Here's a verse. Here's the scripture. Here's the scripture.
Women are Saddam Hussein. Ecclesiastics.
Genesis 3:16 says this. You'll experience pain in childbirth, right? And your desire to control your husband, but he will rule over you. She always wants to control you. It's in the Bible.
It's true though. Well, but here's what I mean by that. Obviously not. I'm being a little joke. I'm tongue in cheek right now, being kidding around. But here's what it is though. It's like by definition. So let's look at Saddam Hussein for a second. I'm being a little facetious, but I'm kind of making a very good analogy. So he was not in power to start off with, and neither was the Ba'ath Party. So what he had to do was he had to fight to gain this power. And he did that covertly and subversively on the back end of things. He used deception and manipulation to gain power with these little alliances and different things he was doing. And then he took power in like one fell swoop, which doesn't always happen in a relationship this way, but where he came in and he had then control over people who are in control of the military, people who are in control of the force, people who are in control of other things, and people were his allies, believing that he would be the person in charge. Basically we're like, we'll back you. And then he came in and said, and it was some meeting he had, and I'm all paraphrasing, there's more details, but it was basically, I'm in charge, Ba'ath Party's in charge, and those of your defectors are going to go away. And then police, armed people took away any of his defectors, and people who are on his list came in a very public display, took those men away. And he said, and now I'm in charge. And that was it. There was no such thing as a free election anymore. And he dictated over those people, and he gave in the mindset and framework of a dictator. It's usually someone who comes and takes power over from a position of weakness. And they're always, not always, but usually that's what happens. Their mental framework is always, I have to oppress and keep the power down from my subordinate in order to remain and keep my power here. And that's how they run things. Well, genetically speaking, women are designed to follow a man who is gaining the resources and protecting them. So when those roles so her power in a relationship, if she doesn't trust a guy and cannot surrender to that relationship and that dynamic, if she doesn't trust the guy, which feminist ideology says you cannot trust men at all right? And that has made men less trustworthy. So there are less men out there that a woman could trust. There's not a lot of men out there that women can trust for leadership in a relationship. So that's one consequence, is that men don't believe they have to show up and be a leader anymore. It's equal, right? I can come in and not be a leader. So women don't trust male leadership because of the way that the socially conditioned framework, right? And so with that lack of trust, that means that they have to try to gain control or power for themselves. They do it very much like a dictator because they feel that they are the underdog and that they have to gain this power through deception and manipulation, usually death by 1,000 cuts, and then suppress, once they get the power, the strong, independent woman who runs the house and, she's the boss. Okay. The she's the boss scenario in these marriages. All right. She has to keep that dude down so he does not get too much power. And then, of course, cause her safety and security to be compromised. This belief, there's a general belief in our society that a masculine man needs to be suppressed, or else he will take too much power and he will harm others. So the framework and the belief in a relationship is that a masculine man is automatically deemed as abusive, especially by these younger generations, the under 25s. Masculinity is seen automatically as abusive because this guy is going to have power and then he's going to abuse it. Automatically, it's assumed that a guy is going to abuse power. And so that guy needs to be suppressed and the girl needs to be in charge. When they say equality, that's what they mean by that, is that the girl's in charge. Because we have equality, which means, but what that turns into is the guy better make her happy or else nobody's happy. And so everything becomes about making her happy, and giving her what she wants. Well, then who's in charge then? It's not equality, right? And so she uses, that manipulation oftentimes. I say she, but not every woman, but this is what's being socially conditioned now, is to use manipulation, to use deception, to use, these methods of emotional blackmail to put a guy in a subservient, less powerful position and to control that. That is a definition of dictator. Okay, what a dictator does. Well, what's the difference? Like, why are guys doing the same thing? Well, insecure guys might. And I don't mean to throw the word insecure around. I know it's just a word used to shame men, but no, I mean, we're genetically wired where we get the resources and provide the protection. We're genetically wired to sort of be in that position, right? We're genetically wired to be in that position, and then we have to fulfill the role by our burden of performance as men. So we have to perform in order to fulfill the role of being in the position, okay, of leader, right? So where our framework isn't to try to suppress the girl, our framework, if we're not, again, riddled with trauma and problems and issues, okay, a guy who's with a healthy mental framework, his internal framework is to perform. The guy is trying to be better so that the girl gets her needs met and that he gets his needs met. He's trying to make more money. He's trying to achieve things. He's trying to, to be a better dude, right? That's the framework. How many women out there are actually, going, I'm going to be a better woman for my man? That's not a framework. They're going to be better for themselves. Guys are being better for their wives and their girls. Now, when they realize through my channel, through some red pill and some different things, you know what, I actually have to be better for me and then take care of whoever's in my circles, which would be my woman. Like, that's a different framework, being on my own mental point of origin. But the general socially conditioned man knows he needs to be better for his girl. That's what he thinks. That's not what women think. They need to be better in a way that just serves them. You know what I mean? And being better often just means being able to, get more things from other people, right? For a lot of women, that's the framework. And so, yeah, a guy is not doomed to being like, he is not wired to be a dictator necessarily. That's a guy with a weak framework. A man with a strong framework, he just knows he has to perform. You know what I mean? And he wants to actually, so like for me, I don't want to be a dictator in my relationships. I want to boost up and empower someone I'm in a relationship with, because I know if they have more power in their own lives, then they'll take more accountability for themselves, and they will show up better for me. They will be a better partner to me if I can boost them up and all that. So my framework as an authority in my relationships that I get into is to not suppress somebody, but to make them more powerful. That's not the framework of a woman who's in charge. Okay. I've never seen that. And I study this stuff. I challenge anybody to show me an example. Right. So let's go through some ideas. And ask yourself these questions about your woman. Does your woman think of you before she thinks of herself? Probably not. Right. Should she? Sometimes. But for a woman to think of her man before she thinks of herself, that's considered a bad idea. Well, it's driven a little bit by feminism, isn't it? And that's a solipsistic mindset. So see, you'll notice too that there are genetic leanings that allow feminism to be a thing. So what it plays on, certain genetic behavioral drives that men and women have. It plays on some of those, which is why it is present. Anything that's socially conditioned, that is able to socially condition, only is able to do so because of, genetic behavioral inclinations or drives. Just keep that in mind. There is no social conditioning that works against all behavioral, chimpanzee drives. It doesn't work, because if it wasn't able to push some button in our instincts, then we wouldn't go into that framework. Okay. So all of the attempts of socially conditioning something that doesn't play to any instinct at all, those never take off. And that's why the ones that play into instincts will. Feminism plays into certain instincts on a man and certain instincts in a woman. It doesn't play into other ones, right? So that's why it's able to exist. It does play into certain instincts, doesn't make it good. All right. But it just means, because instincts are just instincts, doesn't mean they're good or bad. So the combinations of things it plays into isn't necessarily good, but that's why. So just, you got to know that as a man, there's certain things that are going to incline you to want to take a feminist sort of stance on something when maybe you shouldn't, when maybe it's not good or appropriate. And obviously there's a ton of things that stimulate a woman to do it, right? How about this? Is your woman high maintenance? You run into a high maintenance woman. All right. That's from a feminist thing. It's because feminism says that a woman is special and wonderful and therefore deserves to be given privileges, taken care of, catered to, all of those things. A woman deserves to have all the best material things and all of this and all of that. She deserves a high value man, right? Without having to do anything to earn it with her behavior or how she shows up. That is a feminist framework. So when women have this framework of being high maintenance, of feeling entitled that they need to deserve and get certain things from a high value man or whatever, however she rationalizes it, that's not dependent on a political view. Okay. There's a lot of very conservative women that think that about themselves. And I'm not saying a woman shouldn't have standards. Okay. Because that'll be the response from women who hear what I just said. Well, that's also a feminist framework, because I never said that a woman shouldn't have standards. But what I'm saying that as a woman, her standards should match how she is showing up, right? A woman has accountability to show up and be a good partner in order to get the rewards for being a good partner. But that isn't the framework for most women. Okay. When you as a guy make pleasing your woman or avoiding her discomfort the mission or the focus of your relationship, that's you taking a feminist framework. And if she believes that about herself, and that's how it should go, that should be your focus, that's a feminist framework. All right. And so that should not be your sole mission of a relationship. Sometimes she gets told no. Sometimes she has to be uncomfortable because it's for the betterment of what you both are trying to achieve long term. And if she doesn't think so or believe it, she can present her concerns. But if the decision goes against what she thinks she wants, doesn't matter. She follows anyway, because you're the leader in that relationship. What I just said is what makes relationships work and what makes the woman ultimately happy as well as the man. However, that's not a feminist framework. And when someone is rejecting that idea of what I just said, that's them falling into this, this mindset, right? This framework. So let's see, what else do I got in this? Let's have a whole bunch. If you are measuring the success or quality of your relationship by how well you meet her needs, that's a feminist framework. See, once again, being entitled and thinking that everything caters to you is what feminist ideology has done. And it's made women not want to cater to their man, right? Does she make your priorities her own priorities? Or does she not care about your priorities? So it's a tough question, isn't it? Because sometimes a woman should be making your priorities hers. Why? Because in a healthy power dynamic, she is the supporting person in the relationship. So she's there to support your goals and needs and priorities. So in order to support your priorities, she has to make those a priority for her. Let me give you an example. Let's say you run a business. She should make your priority, that's your business, part of her priorities, because your business provides resources for her. It provides benefits for her. Even if you guys are just dating, I'm sure you're paying for things. Your success, even if she has her own success monetarily, your success directly influences how she feels about you in the relationship, the status that you have, which makes you a better relationship partner, right? It all affects her in a positive way. Yet most women out there think that that's free and they should just have that for free. And then they get, indignant or angry when you make your business a part of your priority, instead of thinking along the lines of, I need to make his business my priority, meaning I need to support this man to do well in his business. If he can't see me right now because he's got to work, instead of being bitchy about it and then going and texting other guys or going off and getting, trying to make him feel, dread and make him feel some type of way because he's going to work, shit that a lot of women do. Instead of doing that, how about being supportive? You know what? I got the day off right now. He's working his ass off. He's going to have a hard day. Maybe I make some dinner. Maybe I clean the house, and maybe I make, so when he comes home, he gets catered to. He has a nice time, right? It's natural for a woman to do what I just said. And a lot of women do that, by the way. Okay. But it's not, feminism says that makes you something wrong with you as a woman. All right. Feminism says that women should never do anything for the express purpose or benefit of a man. And so instead of looking, so it causes her to show up in a relationship with a lack of gratitude and with a lack of, value. She's not trying to give value. She's trying to take value from you. And that's what feminism does. It puts someone in that mindset, that mental framework. Because again, instead of like, when she wanted to do something with you or have you take her out or do something and you can't because you got a work or some work emergency happens, instead of supporting your business, making that, because that's a priority for you, you see where it goes, right? She, as a supporting member of the relationship, your priorities need to be her priorities to a degree. I mean, that doesn't mean she shows up to work for you and does a job for you, but she should be trying to make it easier for you to do your work. If that was you going to the gym, she should be making it easier for you to take the time to work on yourself. I mean, there's a balance. I'm not saying she should neglect all of her own needs for your priorities or something like that, but she should make them a priority. But see, women in feminism don't, in most women now, they don't think your priorities are your own and they don't think they should have anything to do with it. That's not a healthy framework for a relationship. It doesn't make her a compliment to your life. Doesn't make her more attractive. If you're a 35 or 40-year-old woman with that mindset, you are not more attractive with that mindset. Some girl who's just fun and doesn't care about the priorities either, but she isn't gonna bring any drama over things either, who's 25 will beat you because she's prettier and younger if you're a 35-year-old or 40-year-old woman, because you don't have the wisdom to reject these feminist ideas and realize that his priorities need to be your priority, right? And that's what I mean, right? This is what I mean. See how these things are showing up in ways you never thought of for a lot of you guys listening, all right? Does a woman see your success as more important than her own? Ask a TradCon woman if she thinks that. Most of them will give you a lot of word salad. A lot of explanations will follow instead of, just saying, yeah, because it depends, of course, right, on circumstances, but it depends on what do we mean by success. But like, if you're the primary financial person in the household, let's say as the guy, should she not think about your success, your job should be a priority? But you'll have a lot of girls who work a job that makes a fraction of the money as the guy, and that ends up being her money, not everybody's money. And that's okay sometimes, right? But whatever. But then she doesn't do anything to support the guy's success. You know what I mean? It's a problem, right? Because it's not equal, is it? Right? Let's see here. How about this one? Performing chores and acts of service in hopes that she will be more open to you sexually and willing sexually. That's the thing we see. That's a feminist sort of mindset, that a guy has to earn her vagina. That's also, by the way, a 5 love languages bullshit mindset that I've expressed to even guys and friends of mine who have some pretty good game, why it's stupid. Okay. Because it's like, back to that framework, that's what it gets used as and turned into with a feminist framework. It's like, oh, so I have to do, some chores and clean up and help around the house so that she'll want to be with me sexually. Like, no, sex is sex. You should be desiring that all the time. And so, you should be sharing that as partners. Who does what chores should be a whole separate issue. You shouldn't be using sex as a bargaining tool. But to do that, that's a feminized feminist framework, right? So, yeah, let's see what other answers we got here. What other things? Surprising you with acts of kindness and appreciation, her doing things for you. A lot of guys get in these relationships and marriages, and that totally drops off. A girl doesn't think she should have to do these things. Being just very selfish. It's a feminist framework to think that she doesn't have to do anything for you. You should be doing all of the things for her. It's selfish, right? And it's not to say you shouldn't do things for her as a guy. You should, but why is that not something that, why is that something that she is not thinking she should do too? Right. So admiring you rather than competing with you. That's another one, being excessively competitive with you. These things come from feminism. A woman who's trying to compete with you all the time, like, that's not only is it annoying and obnoxious and very masculine, so it's unattractive, but that's a feminist framework. It's, I can do things better than a man can do. And then they're showing up negatively competing with you. And if you get annoyed or frustrated with that, you're insecure. Meanwhile, you couldn't do the same thing on the other foot, right? She competes with you in something and she wins, and she is a bad winner, let's say, or she does something a little better than you, and then I can do anything a man can do, and shames you for it. All right, so you guys put boxing gloves and you knock her out. What? What? That's not, what do you mean? I'm not suggesting you knock your girl out, but you get what I'm saying. How about you knock your girl out in a boxing match and then belittle her because of it? You see what I'm saying? Like, you couldn't turn the tables on that kind of behavior, because that behavior is inappropriate, right? It's inappropriate to belittle your partner or make her feel bad because she can't compete with you in something. She shouldn't be she shouldn't be expected to compete with you in things like that you would just be better at than her. And then that goes the other way around. And some girls are very good at things that are traditionally masculine things. I've dated women who are auto mechanics. Guess who I'm taking my car? Guess who's fixing the car if I'm with an auto mechanic female? It ain't going to be me. All right. and I could even sit back and learn from her if she knows what she's doing. That'd be pretty cool. There's nothing wrong with that. I can take lessons from a woman on traditionally or classically man things. But if that woman is they'll belittle me or make me try to make herself look cool and make me look like shit because she happens to be better at a skill set, you know what I mean, that I don't, necessarily have as much as she does, that's not okay. Like, that's not what a good, healthy partner does. But women do that all the time. And when women do that in the relationships, that is coming from a feminist framework. You know what I mean? And so that's again, and you'll see that competitiveness, that bitchiness from women of all parts of the socioeconomic scale, all parts of the political scales. Women who claim feminism might do it, but women who don't, women who claim to be conservative Christian, this and that, will do it too. That is a feminist framework, saying Relationship equality and denying male authority. That's one of the most common ones that you see. She should have no problem being like, you're in charge. It doesn't mean she's powerless in the relationship, by the way. And that's the thing about feminism. It's really disrespectful to the power of women. Women have a lot of power in their femininity, in their relationships, and socially. They have a lot of power in their relationships with a submissive or, being on the bottom part of that power dynamic, being not in the primary authority, but being the support. A woman has a lot of influence and power there. A woman actually has more power as the support and submissive influence of a higher value, powerful man. She has more power there than she does competing for power with a man in a masculine level. Right? She has less power competing with her man in her relationship for relationship power versus being with a guy who's worth it and valuable and then taking on a support submissive role, right? She has more power in that role in the relationship itself, as well as in her own life, as well as socially to other people. So a woman doesn't benefit meeting and getting with a guy that she can overpower and then controlling the whole relationship in the framework. That's a feminist idea and framework, and it's led to a lot of failures in the sexual marketplace and in relationships in general. It's led to a lot of unhappiness. A girl would feel much better being with a guy that she can't overpower, who she gives authority to because she trusts him and she supports that man. And she, it has that supportive dynamic with him, and she has influence over that man. Her submissive role, but in her support, gives her influence. She has a say. Like a powerful guy or a higher value guy, his woman or main woman in his life should have the most amount of say in his life. The person that he is romantically attached to, his wife, we'll say, right? Should have the most amount of influence and say. More so, that doesn't mean she will always get her way, that she's always right, but her opinion should be important, right? That gives her a lot of power versus trying to fight that guy who then isn't going to put up with it. So she ends up out of that relationship. And then she meets up with a lesser guy that she can overpower. How does that benefit her more? It doesn't. So pragmatically, feminism has been powerful, or not powerful, harmful to women. Pragmatically, feminism has been harmful to women and their success because they're much better off being in that and will feel better, will feel more valuable, feel better, feel more like a woman, embracing her femininity, complimenting a dude's life, and being a good support system and being a good influence on that guy, without trying to control that guy. Right. But you'll see these behaviors, Here's another one. Is she ever overly surprised or upset with your anger when you get angry or frustrated? That's a feminist framework. I'm not saying you should have no emotional self-control, but to think that you can't have any frustration or anger or that you can't have an emotion, anything other than what she accepts, that's a form of oppressing men through feminism. You can't get frustrated, you can't get irritated, you can't have a feeling of discontent and show that feeling, because if you show that feeling, she's going to shame you for it, say you're insecure, or get upset, like, and go, you're an abuser, or you're a problem, or you know what I mean? Like, I'm not talking about actually abusive behavior. I'm not talking about excessive anger, but I'm talking about like, nobody's getting hurt. Nobody's getting physically beat up, nothing like that. So we're not talking about massively abusive behavior. There's a big difference between actually abusive behavior and what feminist women say is abusive. Okay, huge difference. So I'm not talking about actually abusive, but she does something she should not do. You show your discontent, and she's surprised. And what? What do you mean? That's a feminist framework. She should expect your discontent, and in fact, embrace the fact that you have standards, right? How come she can get irritated and mad and show any emotion she wants, and we're supposed to put up with that, but you have any emotion? Well, you're going to be labeled as something. See, that is a feminist gynocentric framework, and it's used as a means to control you as a man. All right. And I'm not mentioning these things because these are things that you want to recognize and then mitigate for those things in your relationships. You're going to have standards and boundaries that mean you don't put up with these things. You're going to have a different mental model and framework that you will present to these girls before your commitment, or sometimes in the commitment, that she can adopt and be more on board with your model of how things go, which is going to be better for the both of you than any sort of feminist model that she's been indoctrinated into. Okay. See what other ones here. There's so many. I just wrote down so many things. It's kind of haphazard notes. Does she plan ahead to ensure that you're taken care of? Or are you always planning, the one have to plan ahead to ensure that she is in the right, in the mood that you want, that in the right mood, and the mood that you would want her to be in? And that's a good question, right? I'm not saying as a man you shouldn't plan ahead. Of course you should. I love, as a man, taking care of, my girl or girls if I'm dating, and planning ahead logistically and making for a nice time. I love doing that. But she should be planning ahead too. Is she like not showing up on time, or not thinking like she's going to come over to hang out with you? Is she asking if you need anything, or is she just like showing up late? Right? Is she offering to help out or to clean, or to, you cook dinner? Is she going to try to clean and offer, is she offering value, or is she just taking value? Right. And that's what that means. All right. In terms of planning, that's what that means. Now, some girls are just not planners. It's not that you want her to plan the dates. That's not what I mean. But she should do her own planning. In other words, like, hey, Friday night, I got tickets for something, dinner. Let's make a night of it. Maybe depending on your dominance of your role, maybe you tell her, wear that dress I like, wear this, tell her what to do. That's fine. But she should be the one thinking about how she's going to prepare for that Friday night. Is she going to make sure she's groomed? She's got, she looks good for you, that she's ready on time, that she's showing up in the right mental space. Is she adding value to what you have planned? Or is she just a freaking train wreck and a shit show? Because if she is, she's not being considerate of you, number one, and that follows a feminist framework. She shouldn't have to be considerate of you. You should have to scramble around to figure out how to make her happy, while she just shows up however she feels like that day. And maybe she doesn't even go with you because she doesn't feel like going that day. Right? This is the kind of crap you run into. And it's bullshit. And it does come from that, framework. Is she always measuring? In other words, tit for tat. Is she always thinking about like, well, you got to do that, so I got to do this? Is she so focused on fairness and equality that she's keeping score. That's a feminist framework. Always keeping score. That's feminism, right? In a relationship. Oh, well, you got to do this, so I should do that too. Listen, men and women are not equal, and they're not equal in a relationship. And I'm not saying one is better than the other. I'm saying it's circumstantial. It depends on what we're talking about. I'm just saying we're not the same. Okay. And so there's certain things that you as a man are going to do and should be able to do because you're a man in the relationship. And there's certain things as a woman that she is going to have and she is going to be able to do. Certain ways that you'll cater to her that she'll never cater to you. But that's okay, right? We're not saying you never cater to your woman. We're just saying she does things as a woman to cater to you, to make you also feel good, right? As a man. And that's to not do that the other way. That's a feminist framework. When she's constantly keeping score, though, so this is what you'll run into with a lot of the conservative types who won't agree that they're feminists. What they do is they'll keep score instead. So they know that they should do things for you because to not do that would be really selfish. They've accepted that. So that's at least good. But then instead of just letting it happen organically and naturally and being genuinely enthusiastic about doing things for the guy that she's with, she's so concerned about being taken advantage of or so concerned about, not having power in this relationship that she's always counting and keeping score. You know what I mean? Well, he did that for me, so I guess I'll do this for him. Oh, I did this for him. Now he better do something for me or I'm not doing anything. Like it's that kind of a mindset. And it shows up pretty horribly in relationships, this keeping score thing. That's how we know that she's in a feminist framework. Now, it doesn't matter that she's in a feminist framework or not. These are just things that women do. Okay. These are things that women do in the United States. These are things that women do in Australia, in Europe, not Eastern, but Western Europe. These are things that women do in westernized countries. And so when they do these things, you know where they come from, but it's not about having a spurgy, weird discussion about how this came from feminism, blah, blah. It's simply about addressing the problem. When you pick up a girl from the United States, you know that she's going to have some of these behaviors I'm mentioning, period. You know it comes with the territory. Now, that doesn't mean you put up with it. Okay. That doesn't mean that stays that way permanently. She just needs to be shown a better way through your frame. Okay. And through the enjoyment of being in a relationship with you and the experience of being in a relationship with a guy who offers a better life than what for yourself and for her than what she could have on her own or than what she could have with some simpy dude who puts up with her shit. That's how you are able to reframe these things. She sees a better way. She's motivated to want to keep that. And she's able to start challenging these behaviors. Now, hopefully you're picking someone who has less of these negative behaviors and then more of them. However, you will have some work no matter what you do. That's just the way it is. You want to try to do this work before you end up in the relationship. I know that doesn't always work out that way, but you want to do that. You as a man need to be comfortable with being the object of her desire, not always making her the object of your desire. Most men nowadays simp for their girls. They make them the object of her desire, and they're not comfortable when that's the other way around. In fact, they'll disassemble that themselves because of their discomfort, because they think that, that's just not the framework that they're in, because they've been indoctrinated with feminism too, And so, yeah, the strong independent woman narrative. That's what you're looking at. And that strong independent woman narrative means that she's never, that she has to take care of herself. She can't trust a man. And it's always a power struggle, and she'll never do anything to please a man unless it's, part of this tit for tat scorekeeping, quid pro quo, or whatever they call it, situation, right? If there's scorekeeping, you're doing things for her. She's like, well, I better do something for him to keep it even. That's when she does it. That's not a good framework. Strong, independent woman narrative. Any woman who cannot submit to your authority and admit that to other people, he's in charge because he's my dude and I'm happy about that. That's a massive red flag. That's probably somebody who's not going to be capable of having the type of relationship you want, right? And so that's not going to be good. And so don't commit to that until you know that she's not that girl. If she's willing to abandon all of the bullshit that she's been trained and taught in favor of having a better life with you, that's when you have a beginning. That's when you have a start. Your value as a man is going to make that more and more enticing for a woman. All right. But at the end of the day, though, regardless of your value, she has to make the choice to be different and behave differently. She has to be willing to have awareness and to see things differently. And if she doesn't, she will fall to her socially conditioned framework. Regardless of her political views, regardless of whether she says, hey, I'm a feminist, right? Or I'm anti-feminist. She could be pro-life or pro-abortion. She could be pro-Christian or anti-Christian. She could be Democrat, Republican. She could be woke left or she could be conservative right. Doesn't matter. She is in a feminist framework and she needs to be open to getting awareness of that and changing that with your frame, and with you being, again, high value will be the payoff for that. But you could be the most high value man in the world. If she's not willing to recognize it, see things from a different perspective, and if she's not willing to modify and change that behavior, she will not be a good partner for you. She won't be a good partner for anybody. And unfortunately, that is most women nowadays. I say most, I don't mean like, all women. I don't even mean like, I don't think that the percentages are so terrible that people think, but it's definitely a lower percentage that are going to be relationship capable. Most of them won't be, an even smaller percentage will be that way right from the start. So one thing I don't ascribe to is this idea that it's going to be effortless. I disagree with that. I think if it's effortless, it's because you're putting up with shit and justifying the reasons why. Or because there isn't that much desire or attraction in the relationship. I think when desire and attraction plays a role, all of the, insecurities come out for both partners, and then all of the socially conditioned behaviors present themselves, and those negative, like those socially conditioned behaviors that are not conducive for a healthy relationship, become more of a threat to the guy because he's desires up and he doesn't want to lose, he sees those for the threat that they are, and they need to be dealt with. So your frame, your game, that's what's going to help that and help you deal with this. And when I teach frame and game, right, my mastermind program, all the things we do, when I teach how to get an appropriate mindset and how to handle your emotions and your mental framework and to hold your frame, I go through how to respond to these types of these things, the behaviors that these ideas that she has causes. I tell you how to respond to those behaviors so that you get a different result, and that she challenges those behaviors and then alters them so they're no longer harmful, right? And that's what you're going to have to do. You have to do that. You can't get away with not doing that with most women nowadays. because of how they've been socially conditioned. So if there's anything you walk away from that. You have to understand that regardless of her expressed views, there's a social conditioning that has taken place, and much of that social conditioning is harmful to you and to the relationship that you would want to have with her. You're going to have to know that, even if she doesn't know that. And then you can handle it. And that'll be that. So that's my closing remarks. Glenn, we got any questions that we can finish off with?
Yes, sir. We got questions. We got a few questions. I wanted to tie a little bow on the back of that before you slap that ass.
Yeah.
All right. So because there's a lot of people dropping scriptures in here, and I am the resident Bible college student that actually has a degree in this. What I wanted to point out, well, T Diamond said, you're talking about female empowerment, Paul. You're a male feminist, ? All right. So
about what? What does she mean?
When it comes to relationship dynamic, right? From a biblical standpoint, right? In a structure that they're mentioning here, because they're going to mention 1 Corinthians. I see it that.
Right.
It is as simple as this. There's one scripture that kind of defines everything. Wives, submit and respect to your husbands. Husbands, love your wives. It's what we have a problem with today is that we have husbands respecting wives and submitting to wives, and wives loving husbands. They have switched roles, and that's why we having the problem that we have today.
Well, and I want to add one thing to that is that they're not really loving though the guy in the way that they should be loving him. They're loving him in a way that a type of love that they might have for a subordinate, like a child or like a good friend maybe. And at times when they feel that love, they're not loving in a way of desire, the way that they would have love for a husband when they've submitted to the guy. You see?
But here's the thing about it. Men view love with respect.
Yes.
So she's not loving you. If she's not respecting you, she's not loving you.
That's right.
So if you are loving her or you're respecting her and submitting to her, oh, I got to check to see what the little lady says, or I got to ask the boss lady, she one's where, dude, you are switching roles. You're switching roles. And I mean, I know Paul's not big into this, but I'm just saying, let's just use this as a general theme here. Okay. If this is created, if you guys are created in a specific way to operate, right? Yeah, you may functionally be able to switch roles, but how well is that machine going to operate before breaking down? I mean, it may get a few miles, right? You might be able to put diesel in your gas tank, but it's not going to run the best, right? It needs the proper function, Right. So I mean, because I see I think it was T Diamond, she's a smart kid. She goes, love is patient, love is kind, love does not boast. Envy, yes, that is 1 Corinthians 13, 4-8. And also in Corinthians, ladies, let me tell you something. It tells all y'all that you cannot deny your husband unless you are praying. That's right. That ass is his, according to God.
Yeah.
So, but let's see. We got Zach has a good question. He goes, this might, or not question, statement. Or no, it's a question. This might be a dumb question and somewhat off topic. But if a woman cheats on her man, does that mean she doesn't have genuine desire for him? No, that means she's lost genuine desire for him. At that point, she's determined that her getting caught is worth it because her relationship with her husband is not.
Yeah, 100%. Even if that guy is contextually more of the alpha guy, it's still the desire has been compromised, and so the guy could be the better sexual option, but she's willing to explore. She's willing to explore the idea that somebody else might be, at the very least. So the desire is gone, is compromised now. You know what I mean? She could find out later that, okay, the guy I cheated with wasn't better than the guy I was with, but the idea of her, the fact that she wants to go explore that means that that desire is compromised. Now, it could be compromised, like if it's revenge cheating, it could be compromised through anger and, wanting to get back at the dude and wanting some sense of justice and all those things that can happen, where she's so angry at the dude that her desire is not, like, she's disgusted by him or angry, right? And then she ends up sleeping with somebody. That can happen, but at the end of the day, though, the desire is compromised, right? It's just not there. Yeah.
I want to point out another thing though, because in Ephesians 5, everybody likes to quote 5:22 through the end, right? Where it says, submit wives, husbands, love your wives. It says submit to each other in 5:21. And that doesn't mean like, oh, we're egalitarians, we're equal. No, he's saying submit to your roles and your positions.
Right.
So
I did that video, submit to the relationship. That's similar.
Yeah, if Paul's the president of the United States, I don't have to like Paul, but I'm going to respect the office that he holds. And that's what he means, like respect or submit to the roles that you have. So husbands don't play wife roles and wives don't try to be husband roles.
Right.
Because you're not respecting each other's roles when you do that, when you step over bounds. That's what that means. In all honesty, because I know
that fits like the dynamic that we're designed for, at least from our evolutionary past. So, because when I did that video, it's a powerful video, really, for people who really want to sort of understand how they have to show up. Is that both men and women have to submit to the relate. Well, I say submit is not right. Surrender is the word I use, to the relationship. So remembering too, biblical, you're reading the Bible in English, and these words have different connotation and meaning taken back to Greek and Aramaic and different, the languages that were originally used. Yeah. And I'm not an expert on that, but it sounds to me though like it is a surrendering to the role and position that you have, meaning if I'm surrendering to the relationship as a man, that means I'm accepting my position,
responsibilities,
right, as a man in the relationship. Yeah. And I'm not trying to control and contrive and get power over my chick. I'm just doing what's best for the relationship within who I am and what my role is. And she's not trying to contrive and control and do those things either. She's doing the same thing. So what you end up having, what you have today and what you have in most relationships that don't work very well, is you have two people trying to control elements of the relationship. And it's a divisive, we actually fit together not in a complementary way as men and women. We fit together divisively. I mean, we want to be together and mate, but then we're trying to control and position all the time, constantly.
Yeah, I mean, and that goes back to Genesis 3:16, where it says your desire to control your husband, but he will rule over you. It's human nature in this sense.
Part of her condition to want to control. She has to make a conscious choice to surrender.
Yes.
And that's where her happiness is.
And he has to make the conscious choice of taking responsibility.
That's his surrender.
That is his
surrendering to the fact that he has a responsibility now.
And you see where they both, like, I mean, from a biblical standpoint, you see where they both screwed up in the Garden of Eden, right? So Adam is like, God,
he didn't
lead. The woman that you gave me, it was her that did this. But he had
no accountability, no responsibility. He didn't lead. He didn't lead and say, and you shouldn't have done that.
Right. And because of his lack of leadership, God's like, your desire now is going to have control over your husband because he did not take his responsibility. And so we see this, play out. I mean, it's really nicely illustrated that way. Whether you choose to believe it or not, it's interesting the way that it's illustrated. And so what we see now, modern days, we say, oh, we're equal. Yes, we're equal in value, in sense like your life matters and my life matters. Okay, we're not equal in function. And that's where the church is screwing up, is they're teaching people that they're egalitarians, that they're equal. And you know what? It's like you You can't have a husband be responsible for everything without having the authority to take care of that responsibility. You can't take responsibility or you can't give responsibility and take away authority.
Yes,
you can't do that, and that's
Yep.
exactly what the church has done, and that's exactly what
Mhm.
modern culture has done.
Well, and that's what, the surrendering aspect is, where she is surrendering to his authority. He is surrendering to the responsibility that he has.
Yeah.
And so you can look at it like that too, but ultimately what it means is that both people are doing what's best for the relationship in and above what is necessarily best for their themselves in a short term. Like, a guy can make a short mental point of origin doesn't mean you just follow your instincts or follow your dick and make short-term decisions. It means that you make the best decisions, which means long-term success as well as maybe short-term needs and things of that nature, right? And if you want to keep your relationship, that means you make decisions that maybe you don't bang your 19-year-old secretary if it's going to compromise your, let's say, Christian marriage that you want to last long term, right? You're still on your mental point of origin by making that decision. If you're in monogamy, in a Christian monogamous situation, you're still on your mental point of origin when you make that decision, and you're making a decision that's best for the relationship and maybe not best for you in the moment that you could bang this 19-year-old right now, right? And so that's just an example, but that's what it is. It's you're looking at, as the man who leads a relationship, what is the best choice for our success in the relationship, in my life, fits into this, of course.
Yeah,
And that's a decision you make, even if you make some sacrifices, or even if you do some things like you maybe don't want to do or whatever. And then her, it's the same thing, but she's not just surrendering to the decisions best relationship. She's surrendering to your authority to make those decisions. And
like
that's how it works.
And even like for those that are religious, it's even a little bit more than just that. Like, there's a reference in the Bible where it says, like, do unto others as if you're doing it unto the Lord. So, ladies, if you're submitting to your husband, you're not submitting to him. You're submitting to his authority because you're being submissive to God. You're being obedient to what God has called you to do. So if you need to have that higher power authority in your life to motivate you to do that, look at it that way. And for guys too, it's like, look, when he says, like, you love your wife as Christ loved the church, like, man, Christ died for the church. Like, he gave up his life for it. So he went above and beyond, he didn't think about himself it's not a selfish position being able to lead, and so, I mean, but they destroyed the servant leader model. I mean, the servant leader model has been obliterated, but, all right. So I got this guy in the chat. I don't know if he's a troll. Okay.
Probably.
I'll
just answer that right now without knowing any other information.
Now, Paul, your girl is not in the army, is she?
No.
Okay. So
that was several girlfriends ago. I've had girls that.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, I think your last one, your new one's a model or a former model.
Was, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So Ralph Lewis, you're wrong. And when he was banging the chick in the army,
I banged several chicks in the army. I had like
proximity. Because I did it.
Right.
So, who cares if the girl is in the military when you're in the military? I mean, it's proximity, close to proximity, easy access.
Military is a red flag. That doesn't mean that. Red flags don't mean don't go forward.
Don't do it. Just means proceed with caution.
Yeah, right. It means that there's a sign that something is wrong, and therefore we need to figure out look further. Now, sometimes some red flags are just like clear no-goes. If, like, she abandoned her kids and has a criminal record for, let's say, violent shit, it's probably a hard stop, right? As a red flag. But if she was in the military, yeah, that's a red flag, because most girls in the military are not, You know, there's a certain framework and stuff that happens. But I've met plenty of girls in the military that I'm platonically cool with.
You could date them. Don't wife them. Don't
Right.
wife any girl in the. I'm telling you right now. I've been there, done it. Bad example. Okay, horrible things.
But I will say this though, I know a couple of girls who are in the military, still serving now, you know, who are great, like they're wife material, you know, and so like these are the exceptions.
I mean, you're talking about some outliers. You're talking about anomalies.
Because I mean, I can count them on one hand.
Every chick that I know in the military, dude, got turned out during tour at some point. You know, and within their 20-year career, if they did 20, you know, it may not have been right away. Right. Been hit by around year 7 of their marriage. Next thing you know, she's shacking it up with somebody on deployment.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Oh, dude, it's almost universal. Like
you got the deployment husbands.
Yeah, non-deployments or long training events, even almost more. We'll say more than not, every girl is hooking up. Relationship, marriage or no relationship, there is maybe a smaller, like if there are, let's say 20 girls, all right, in a battalion worth of dudes or something, you're going to run into 3 or 2 to 4 that are going to not go do anything with any other guys who are in relationships. And the rest are all banging someone. So it is, and then out of the 2 or 4 that didn't bang someone, they're not necessarily good relationship partners themselves. They just happen to have not been banging. Like not banging other people is like entry level. Don't do that. Yeah, there's other things that a person that's like, you know, that doesn't mean like, oh, well, thank God she doesn't bang other people. I better take care of her forever. No, like she could be toxic in other ways too. Like guys
it's just like one less thing, you know, you have to write off the checklist. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. She didn't do any game bangs on deployment. That's good. That's good. Okay. Yeah. You know, like,
yeah.
But so, I mean, like, here's the thing. Like, how do you even know that though? Like, right. You know, like spouses in the military, like unless they get caught up, you know, you don't know what goes down on deployment. Yeah. You really don't.
No. And I've had before, I mean, I've had so many situations where a guys I know, some of those guys could be me. We'll just keep it under wraps.
Let's just say
hooks up with a girl in a training event or deployment or situation. And then, you know, finds out the chick's like married at home, dude. Like, or she's got like baby's daddy situation. Like, you're like, wait a second. Like, this chick's, she got married before.
I will full disclose. I was that dad. I did my time in the service. Yep. And then I got out. And Paul, you know the story. Because you helped me through it. And I found out my ex-wife had 3 affairs on me. And I found out about all of them all at the same time. And one of them was with my buddy who was living with me. I was letting him stay there because his family was, you know, his wife had to take his daughter out of state to go get medical surgery. Right. And I'm like, okay, you need a place to stay? You can stay in my spare room. Biggest mistake I ever made. But yeah, I mean, and I didn't know until the end. It was bad. It was really bad. They could get away with it. They could hide it for very long. And Zach asked a question actually about this. He goes, what's the reason for all the deployment hooking up? Just boredom or proximity? Well, you got to look at it like this.
Both.
Yeah, it's both. You're away from your spouse for up to 9 months to a year, sometimes even longer. You're on a different time zone. So your communication with them, maybe if you're lucky, maybe 6 hours, 4 hours, maybe a week, if that, right? And the response, and that's just talking to them. You know, you could be emailing them when you can, you know. So it's like there's a lot of different like things that take place, and then now you're with these other group of people, and then you establish bonds with them, you know, and it's kind of like you are taken out of reality into this new world where all you have is these people here.
It's a high school effect, dude.
Yeah, it's like you don't have husband no more, or you don't have wife.
Right. They become because they're emotional.
This is your family. This is your new family. And now you are trying to navigate your new family. And
they're emotional. And so the
We're all
emotions
emotional
of
beings, and we're all attracted. You eventually get those, you know, you start looking, and the next thing you know, like, man, and then passes go by, and then, you know, you're like, was that a pass? And then you find yourself drinking a bottle of Jack, and next thing you know, she's on your dick, and you don't know what happened.
Yep. Oh yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well, and that's it. It's they make these bonds with these dudes. And this is why if you need to click, especially you military guys, and if you have a woman who's your wife or girl is in the military as well, but I'd say everybody needs to do this, but especially guys, military wives, military husbands, you need, or girlfriends, whatever, right? You need to click on my guide to setting boundaries and cheat proofing your relationships. It's for free. It's just in the description right now of the video. You need to, after this or in a different window, click on that and sign up for that and get that series, because I lay out, you know, basically all of the layers of protection you have for cheating on somebody else. And what happens is you remove those layers when you end up on a deployment situation. And she does, especially like genuine desire for her partner is the first strongest defense for the girl. Okay. Not for the guy, believe it or not, because the guy could be in genuine desire and still bang like a 3 because he drank, you know, because he was bored and it's been 2 weeks since he saw his girlfriend. Like, guys need other barriers other than just wanting to bang, you know, wanting his wife. But girls, the biggest barrier is the desire. But here's what happens: she's away. So the desire is, you know, emotional and is circumstantial. So even though she loves her partner, the desire is here, and then she goes away, and then it drops lower, lower. You know, the desire is just not as high. So she loses that first defense because out of sight, out of mind, pen pals or video talks, that there's no, you know, there's no spark happening over that, which, by the way, you can, like, I've kept things going with girls from distance with, you know, and kept the desire high, sexual interest high. It can be done, you know what I mean, from distance, especially with the use of video conversation and frequent communication. It's no longer World War II scenario anymore where you're writing letters. Like, you can keep desire high, you know, but you have to know how to do that, right? That would be my frame program if you're in that scenario. But, you know, so the desire part goes down. And then the second defense is being found out. So being found out is your next thickest defense. So if the desire is compromised, let's say even if you're in that relationship and she's mad at you, you're mad at her, like it's gotten bad to where you even have to separate or something happens. So now she is open to cheating on you, but being found out though and losing what she has, getting a bad reputation for it, that's what causes her not to. That's your next biggest line of defense. Well, that big line of defense now is removed because all the girlfriends who would find out, they're, you know, they support her cheating. They cheat themselves. Like, there is no social ostracization or judgment there. She does it covertly most of the time. It's not public knowledge because she would be in trouble. So people get very good at concealing and hiding. So you kind of know they hooked up, and some peers will sort of know there'll be a rumor mill, but no one will really be sure about that. And due to SHARP and other regulations in the military, you're not allowed to treat a woman with disrespect or anything like that because she's banged so-and-so, which is not bad necessarily for the work environment. I'm not saying they should change that, but that now is no longer a risk. Guys have to pretend like she's not a slut and work with her so she doesn't have the social, you know, ostracization effect in the same way. And then she's overseas, so the guy will never know. The guy will never find out because he's not in the same area code. And so two biggest defenses, and there's 3 more defenses to put in play, but the 2 biggest ones completely compromised on a deployment. And so that's why they do it. And in fact, a lot of times, and then figuring most women marry out of convenience and marry out of, getting their needs met outside of desire. And they marry someone who's not their peak desire. So when a girl doesn't, girl's been alpha widowed and she marries like, the nice guy, right? Who's a good husband, which is most girls. Most girls do that. Most girls in the military do that. They're no different than any other girl. Well, when they do that, they see like an opportunity to bang someone else and they get a sexual thrill and variety. That's what they take. Why do they take that opportunity? Well, because they feel like they're sexual prisoners in their relationships, because they're with a guy who doesn't completely do it for them. So they've settled and they feel like they're a sexual prisoner. And so this is a chance for them to take a break from their prison of their relationship and just have some variety sex with somebody else. And so there's no better opportunity to do that than on a military, situation. So that's why they do it. And so, yeah, that's the reason. I mean, it's just that simple. And
it's not, and just so you guys know, the wives or the husbands and wives that are at home, they just as bad, if not
a lot
worse.
of times they are. A lot of times they are.
Dude, I remember this. Here's a story. So I'm living in base housing, right? And this is after I got out and my wife decided to join. My ex-wife decided to join. And so I am now the veteran and, dad, and she's deploying out. And all the women in the neighborhood, right? Like we had lived in big base housing. So check this out. They busted a prostitution rink in base housing.
Oh, yeah.
Like, no.
They've done that in Kuwait. They've done that on bases.
They changed the light bulbs to green. If there's a green light bulb outside that house, that means it's going down. Okay. Yep. And if there's a red one, that means don't come over. Like, yeah, it was crazy. Oh, yeah. It was 13 wives, right? From enlisted, from ranking from like E7's wives all the way down to like E1's.
Yep.
And they were like the wives club.
Yeah.
These girls did everything together. They shopped together. They threw the Christmas parties together.
That's your family readiness group, bro.
Seriously, the
family readiness group.
Like
it makes some extra money, dude.
Everything. They did everything. I'm not gonna lie. After I got divorced, I banged like 2 of them, but still, it didn't matter. Like I already knew what they were about, so I'm like, okay, this is gonna be a lot easier.
Right? Yeah. Yeah, I mean, this the craziest shit goes on, man. And that's why military is a red flag for women, particularly. And the reason why, it's not that guys don't cheat or aren't savage too, but here's the thing about men: a man on a deployment has much less of an opportunity than a woman staying at home, right, while her man's gone, or
also a woman on deployment. Because when a woman's on deployment, there's like
endless opportunity.
There's like over 5,000 guys out there at any given time, right? And there's maybe 100 women.
Right.
Yep. Those odds are ridiculous. Like she's getting dick thrown at her in every direction. Okay, you could be in the same scenario. You're like, your odds are worse than getting a date on Tinder.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. And the most damage a guy on a deployment could do is, I mean, if he doesn't hook up with somebody and is somebody's like deployment wife, right? He's not one of the very few guys that ends up having that going on with the 100 girls available. And I say available, but like not even a lot of out of the 100 that are available, a lot of them are not even somebody you'd want to hook up with. So you're even talking less than that, right? And a lot of times if you see a girl who's hot, she's already hooked up with somebody, and so you're not even getting the opportunity necessarily, because she would rather, because she will, some girls will sleep, will bang multiple guys, but most girls, what they actually do is they hook up with one cheating partner for a while because it makes them less likely to get caught. And so they hook up with this dude and that lasts 3 or 4 months, or even the duration of deployment before they hop onto another dude. So like, yeah, you got your the stereotypical hoes are hooking up with multiple guys. They usually get caught and something happens. They often get kicked out or reprimanded, but
You know what
not
I
usually.
noticed though? Like,
Yeah.
okay, so I have never met a woman or known of a woman that was active that actually got the Article 134.
They
But
never get in trouble.
I know tons of guys. I
Yeah.
know tons of guys that got
Oh.
Article 134 for affairs, for having
Yep.
you can't. So in the military, you are not allowed to cheat. All right. And it's actually a military crime. It's against the UCMJ. That's the Uniform Code of Military Justice. All right.
Yep.
And if I know guys that got caught cheating on their wives and they got busted down rank, you know, they got divorced and like and they lost pay. Like it Article 134 is, I think it's the it's the affair one, right?
Yeah.
Isn't that what it is?
So, I'm not a military you know, I was obviously not a military lawyer, but yeah, I think so. You know what I mean? But yeah, no, I there's women are protected.
They won't get busted for it. She could have a train run out on her.
Yep.
And they will blame the guys running the train.
That's right. That's what happens. That's the way that the system is designed. It's very, once again, very gynocentric. Guys are not, or women are not getting in trouble usually. What they'll get in trouble is like they'll get kind of in trouble in a way that they get their hand slapped sometimes, but then they just get moved around or whatever. They don't usually lose rank. I've never seen them take a girl who's hoeing around and bust her down from an E6 or something to an E4 or an E1, like anything like that because of her behavior. Because the whole idea is that, well, when they find out why she got busted down, it's because she was a slut. That's going to end up, changing how everyone looks at her and thinks about her. So we can't do that, right?
And it's going to go
against
we can do it to the dudes. Right? It's going to go
Yeah.
into the narrative about, women can be just as equal as men and blah, 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 blah. It's like, she was taken advantage of. They were using their rank and their position and their camaraderie. She wanted to be part of the brotherhood.
Right. Yeah. They use every excuse in the book to absolve her of her own behavior.
Yeah.
Then
she could be the one texting them, "Hey guys, I want a train ran on me. Can the three of you come over?" And then they're like, "Okay." And they all three will be in trouble for the train that she wanted to begin with.
Yeah. Absolutely. No, it's insane. And the things you're saying are not internet exagerations.
No,
these are all things that have happened.
This is dead ass serious. I know this shit.
Dude, so check this out.
I've either lived
for this one
or I've been there.
Here's one for you. I heard from, and it's a reliable source because I heard from some of the PAs or doctors that were there, that there was HIV happened in Kuwait. Right. Now, it happened. I don't know who brought it, but it happened. It was discovered because they were having orgies in a Connex. Now, here's the orgy. The orgy is not what you think of, the civilian listener would think of as an orgy. It's probably 2 girls and like 15 guys. You know what I mean? Because there's, not that many girls compared to guys, right? And they're not going to have a lot of girls to participate in that.
There's going to be like 2 girls going to get ran through 30 guys.
That's what it is. So it was a massive train scenario in a Connex, and nobody can see, so it was this dark Connex weird scenario. First of all, no thank you. Second of all, could you imagine the smell in Kuwait in a Connex with 2
smells like hottie butthole and fried corn chips.
It already smells bad.
Yeah, that's what it smells like without. I mean, like Kuwait stinks so bad because of the heat. Like, yes, you smell your smell smelling like it's horrible. Imagine rubbing all that smelly smell. Oh man,
yeah, it's like 100
camel's ass.
130 degree days. It's probably at nighttime, and then they're in a Connex. It's 85 degrees in there, and 15 dudes. Getting AIDS. AIDS probably wasn't created there. They probably nobody actually had it. It
Nobody had it until then.
It manifested itself in this comics. Yeah, but that's not only is that disgusting, but that's the shit that happens, and it's real. It's not bullshit. You know what I mean?
That ass serious. Like, and you know, a lot of the times, it's women that initiate this shit. That from what I know, you know, like women initiate a ton of this shit. Like,
women are generally the initiators, dude.
There was
because
this
guys are so scared to initiate.
There was this porn movie that like some amateur porn movie, and they were literally Navy personnel in uniform going to this hotel, and there was like one girl and 3 dudes, and you could tell it was all amateur the way that it was shot and everything, and they were all calling each other like they're by their last names, because that's what we do in the military. We don't call each other by our first names. So they gave like legitimate tells that like this is authentic. And then when they got busted, the girl got free. The girl got free. She was manipulated.
Oh yeah, right. Manipulated.
They got in trouble for sodomy. You know, you can't have anal sex in there.
Not allowed.
There's a lot of things you're not allowed to do.
Which is ironic that the Navy won't let you have anal sex. That's a DOD thing, I think, though. Well, I don't even keep
like wait a minute. So you could be gay in the military now, but you can't have sex?
No.
Because they never removed the sodomy from it.
That's really funny. I never thought of that. Jesus.
Yeah. We have a super chat. We do have one super chat. We'll wrap it up here.
Yeah.
It's from Johnny Bravo. $5, whatever that is. LTR on all of it. Let me get that word right. I can't say it, but you know what it is. It's like when she's on the like her period thingy. It's like elevation.
Yeah.
Okay.
Ovulation.
Dressing up, makeup, etc. To meet male real estate agent to see potential house. Red flag or everything great LTR. If your girl is dressing up and she's on her cycle to meet a real estate agent, I mean, women like to dress up to look professional and, or just make sure that they look presentable. But I mean, I guess that kind of depends on how much the dress up it is. Like, is that dress a little too V cut? You know, is the girls popping out a little bit, or is it really form fitting? Like, I think that a lot of it depends, right?
Yeah. I mean, it depends on, well, first of all, look at the agent. What does he look like? Does
he look better than you?
Right. So be honest with yourself there. Second of all, why is she? So he says LTR. I mean, not to say you should cohabitate or shouldn't, but why is she seeing a real estate agent without you seeing the real estate agent? If you're in a relationship, like even if she's in a relationship with me and we don't live together, I would, probably be seeing the house with her a lot anyway, even if I'm not going to live there, just because, right? So is it something you couldn't join them with? That's the question. If you were to say like, oh, cool, you know what? I want to come with, I want to see the house with you. Would that be seen as weird or problematic, or would it vibe check that shit? You know what I mean? If it's like, oh, hey, this is my boyfriend, and if it's a weird and they're looking at each other like there's some weird vibe, like something's wrong there.
Or just say like, don't just surprise her, be like, hey, guess what? You know what? I got time off today. I'm gonna go check out the house with you. And she goes, oh, you don't have to do that. There's something wrong.
Yeah, right. Exactly. She should be wanting you.
She should want you to come. If she goes, no, it's okay. I don't want you to take away from work.
Yeah. So it all depends on the circumstances around it. Yeah. And so,
he's gonna give her a tour of the house.
Right. And we say dressed up. Like, is it out of the spectrum of how she would normally dress for every day, or is it just?
I think that's what I said. It kind of matters, right? Like if she's wearing something that she normally wears,
right?
Then
let's say like, okay,
deal,
like
right?
I would wear, so like, would she wear that to go to lunch with her girlfriends or to go to somewhere else? But it's like nicer.
Or does she wear that to work?
Yeah. Or is she dressed up, but she works in an office? Like, Yes. Or is it something where like she's putting on like, F me clothing that she would
Oh,
never wear at 3
followed
o'clock
up.
in the afternoon? You know what I mean? That's definitely a red flag, right? Like,
Johnny
now,
Bravo followed up. He goes, "She is ruining chores for me." That's good.
right?
So, I'm hoping that means like when she's doing chores, like she's making them very entertaining, or like chores as in she's leaving the house to go run chores, and you're seeing her like going
Not
out
sure what he means.
someone
Yeah,
else's chores.
not sure what he means by that.
Neither do I, but it could be one or two things. But yeah, I think it
Right.
kind of like all depends, right? Like it depends on if this is something that you find a little too provocative and you've mentioned it before,
Right.
right? If it's like a low cut top, you're like, hey, babe, can you not like wear that top to work? It's a little too revealing. And then
Yeah.
she's like, okay. But then that day she decides to wear that low cut top. Well, I'm not going to work.
You know what a good thing is, a good rule.
Running chores for me. That's what he says.
Oh, what a good rule is not a rule, but guideline is look for things in threes. Okay. So like you see she's getting dressed a certain way to go see this agent. Okay, well, that's one data point. How drastic is it deviating from what you would normally do? These are things you want to look at. You want to look at other things though. Is she sort of, seem to be chatting a lot with this guy outside of just houses, things like that? Is the guy somebody that is an attractive guy she would hook up with? Like, look for multiple signs. If you get 3 of them, that's when and if you need it, and again, each thing has different weight. So, you can make up 3 things in your head. Don't do that. But if you see 3 like pretty reasonable thing, like example, like you're like, yeah, well, I kind of want to see it too. Do you mind if I'll come with? And she's like, nah, I got this. That's a major one. Like that's a really one to
Well, you're
question.
trying to look to see if she's off her baseline behavior, right?
That's right.
You're really just trying to see like, okay, the 3 things they have to be, all 3 of them have to be off her baseline behavior.
Yes.
Before you start considering like, okay, something's off here. Like because she could have got up beside the wrong side of the bed and she could have been short with you, and you might be taking that as an issue. Like, well, that's not the only reason. Like, okay, that's not. Oh, that's
right.
not doesn't mean anything. But when there's 3 different things
off baseline,
behavior, then you're like, okay,
now I need to actually
something
make
going on here. Yeah,
right, exactly. So
and
that's
it may not even be anything related to that, but at least the 3 things off baseline is a great indicator that something. I always call it there's a disturbance in the force.
Yeah,
like the force is off. Okay, like
exactly. Exactly.
So, let's see. Any other chat questions? No, I think we're good. We
are
good to go. Oh, wait a minute. Winky Wright. Who would win in a fist fight? Stirling Cooper or Rich Cooper? Stirling got the speed advantage, but Rich got the power. Well, let's say it this way. It's whoever has the better defense and counter, in my opinion.
Yeah.
From a boxing strategy, because you could be the strongest person in the world, but if you can't connect because their defense is better, and they just got to land a couple. I mean, Manny Pacquiao.
Right. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. I know Stirling was
but Stirling had like one fight.
Yeah, but but that's still training for that, and all that is still more, like Rich is training, but he's just training for himself. He's not necessarily
training for the end of the world. Okay.
yeah. He's not necessarily like getting in the ring. Like he's not trying to build, like he's not having amateur fights here, which he doesn't have to, right? But I mean, who knows? Who knows? Who cares? It's a weird question.
Yeah,
it's funny, but I don't know. I don't have any answers for you. So they should do an exhibition for charity. See how it goes. They got the same.
I'll be down to watch that one.
That'd be cool.
All right. Other than that, that's it.
All right,
guys. Well, thank you for tuning in. All right. So if you have a feminist girlfriend, I hope you guys paid attention. Okay. There's a lot of good things in there. And if you don't have a feminist girlfriend, but you might have a feminist girlfriend, or you might want to bang a feminist girl, at least I hope you took some notes. All right. Without further ado, we are out of here. You guys enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you, Paul, as always.
Thank you,
And
sir.
until
We'll
next
see you
time.
next week.
Peace. We are out.
All right. Sweet.
Cool.
Oh, yeah, man. What'd you think of that?